Sandra. Welcome to another episode of Asexualise, my asexual life. This is the place to be for education about asexuality, so subscribe and hit that bell icon right now. So today we're going to be talking about understanding avoidant attachment style, the darker side of avoidant attachment style, and how to protect yourself, basically how to recognize the signs so you can protect yourself because you can know what's happening with the other person. This was a video that I've intended to do for some while. I got requested to do a video on avoidant attachment style by one of the viewers of this channel. I won't say their full name unless they want to disclose it themselves, because sometimes they come in chat, but I'll just call them H, and that's all I'm going to call them for now. But they did ask me to do this video. They'll probably know who they are because of the word H. And I know this can help a lot of people. Oh, hi, Heather, it is you. I hope you don't mind me saying. I know you wanted me to do this video for a very long time. So here I am. Right. So avoidant attachment. This is really hard. So first of all, I have to let you know that attachment styles are all to do with how you attached to your parents or caregivers or people that were really prominent in your life as a child. It's how you attach to people that looked after you, basically. And there's usually 4 different types of attachment style. One is secure, which is the best one. The other 3 are insecure attachment styles, which are anxious attachment, avoidant attachment, and there's anxious avoidant, right? Anxious avoidant is a cross between the two. And they usually have very erratic behavior. So they might come close because they're really anxious, don't want to lose you. And then they might be like pushing you away to avoid you because they're up and down the whole time. I grew up in house with bipolar brother. Oh dear. It's difficult. I mean, bipolar isn't the same as avoidant attachment. Some people with bipolar can also have anxiety as well. So they can be anxiously attached. How many people I've known with bipolar? I've known a couple of people, 2 or 3 people with bipolar disorder. And there's another person I know that's slightly got, well, actually, there's more. So my auntie had had manic depression. She's no longer here on planet Earth. So I think she might have, I'm not sure if she had bipolar as well, or if it was kind of all wrapped in the same thing. But yeah, it's hard to deal with. But I've known two people that did have bipolar disorder, and there's another person I know quite well, and I think they've got it because they've got manic behavior up and down the whole time. So it's very difficult if you're dealing with someone who is bipolar. Oh, and I met someone earlier this year who ended up being bipolar. I mean, it's difficult because they're up and down, but obviously bipolar is an actual disorder where the person's up and down rather than an attachment style. They're slightly different things. Obviously, the disorder might originate from childhood trauma in some way, and attachment styles will no doubt play into that. But I'm not an expert on bipolar disorder, so I have to say before I start doing this video, I'm not a medical professional. I'm not trained therapist, a psychologist or counselor. So I am a person on YouTube who's just talking from their experience. So do bear this in mind for the people watching at home. Heather, me neither. So yeah, so we've got secure attachment style, and then the 3 insecure attachment styles, which are anxious avoidant, anxious, and avoidant. So there's avoidant just on its own, anxious on its own, and anxious avoidant. Anxious avoidant is like up and down erratic behavior because they go between the 2 things usually. So they have both behaviors up and down. Heather, I keep learning. That's all I can do. This is true. So, when I started doing research actually for my Asexual Guide to Sex book, which I haven't finished, and I started in 2019, that's when I started looking into attachment styles. I think it was 2021 I actually started the attachment style research. And that's when I got to understand myself better. Now, I have an actual anxiety disorder, but I've also got anxious attachment style. So I've got a lot of anxiety. But today we're talking about avoidant attachment style. So people with an avoidant attachment style, they have the mindset that they are better on their own, they're better being independent, they like their autonomy, they like their freedom, and they kind of like to keep their emotions to themselves and process it themselves. They usually see being in a relationship as something that is giving up their freedom. If it's a committed relationship, if it's just a hookup, it's usually fine because there's no commitment, right? But if it's a serious committed relationship, you'll find a lot of avoidance will avoid getting into a serious committed relationship in the first place because they don't want to give up their freedom. They see being independent. Now, when I say independent, this is how they view independence. You can be independent still in a relationship, but an avoidant sees being in a relationship as giving up their freedom. So if you're looking to get into a relationship, it's very difficult to be in a relationship with an avoidant unless you are another avoidant, right? I find that two avoidants can work really well in a relationship because they're both avoiding things, right? So they're both avoiding the same thing. So they understand each other really well and they have very surface level conversations. And they're not going to reveal too many emotions because avoidants don't like talking about emotions. So avoidants will usually avoid emotional intimacy. They like physical intimacy, but they will usually avoid unless a physical intimacy makes them feel too emotionally close to the person, or you know what I mean. So it's anything to do with getting close to the person emotionally, they find it hard to deal with. So it's very difficult if you're an anxious attachment style, particularly with an avoidant, because they work opposites to each other. So an avoidant person, if there is a conflict in a relationship or friendship or whatever connection, if there's a conflict, they won't want to deal with that if it's emotions that's involved. Usually they usually avoid conflict, and they usually shut down in emotional conversations, or they feel overwhelmed and they can't actually respond. They might be vague, they might make up some excuse to leave the room or divert the conversation to something else. They don't want to sit down with you and discuss how our relationship is going, how our friendship's going, and how emotionally we're feeling. They don't like the feeling questions. Avoidants like to avoid deep emotional intimacy usually. Depends if they've done any work on themselves and how much work they've done. But in general, they avoid emotional intimacy because they find it frightful. They get scared by it. They want to run away. They want to push the person away. It's very difficult because with an avoidant, especially if you're anxious attachment, the relationship or friendship or connection is literally up and down like this the whole time. So you might find that you talk to your avoidant partner or connection or friend and you try and express how you feel, especially if you're sharing your emotions. And like I say, they might shut down. They might avoid discussing the emotions with you. It'll just be like, okay. Or it might just be they sit there and don't say anything to you. And you're there going, oh, I'm really feeling like a bit upset now because, you know, the thing that happened the other day, it made me feel really distant from you. And I'm just feeling like emotionally sort of drained now. And I'm feeling like I want to get really emotionally close to you again because I feel like distant from you. And, you know, I want us to talk about how we feel about each other emotionally. You know, like, where is our relationship headed? Where are we going? What's happening? And, you know, are you attracted to me? Are you feeling close to me? Are you feeling like love? And they're like, oh my God, love, the love thing. So it depends. I mean, obviously avoidants do have relationships. Avoidants can love. I tend to find that they are, like I said, best suited to other avoidants because when you've got two avoidant attachment people, they will have surface level conversations. So avoidancy is all about surface level conversations, right? They want to talk about the weather, politics, history, scenery, anything that's not deep emotional connection stuff, right? So if you come across avoidance and you end up talking to them, you won't usually find that they start talking about their emotions and how they feel about you, especially not on a deep level. they will usually do acts of service to show they care rather than expressing emotions in words. So if they do love you, if they have love feelings for you, they will likely do acts of service, like repairing your car for you if you've got a car, fixing light bulbs, fixing things in your home, doing tasks for you. So that's kind of how they will show their love and affection. Whereas if you, like, for example, an emotionally attached person, you might want them to give you more because you might want this deep emotional connection with them, and it can feel quite hollow that you've got this person who's doing all these tasks for you, and it looks amazing, right? It looks like, oh my god, they're helping you, they're putting shopping in your car, in the car, they're taking you here, there, and everywhere. They might be buying you drinks, buying you a new dress, giving you gifts, all this lot. But that connection is missing the emotional intimacy. This is how you can end up in a relationship with someone yet feel totally alone and isolated in the relationship. And what may look like a great relationship on the surface, and oh, this person does so much for this person, can actually feel very lonely, because the people who are seeing you in public, for example, are not understanding what it's like at home. If you imagine that you are wanting to get close to an avoidant partner, for example, and you're wanting to bring them close, and you want to talk about your feelings, like I said, they're going to avoid it, right? If they avoid it and you want to talk about it, that makes you feel more distant. It's like you're trying to catch them up all the time. So it's like that they are moving on a train or something, train track, and you're there trying to always catch up with them. Now, the more you try to catch up with them, the more they'll run away, the more the train will go down the track, right? So what is so horrible, the only way you can really deal with an avoidant in a relationship, connection, or friendship is to pull back from them. So when they feel that you are getting too emotionally close to them, they will pull away from you. What might this look like? It might be that they don't see you as much. They don't offer to see you as much. Or if they do message, their messages get more vague. They treat you like a mate down the pub rather than someone they know. Right? And when you try to talk to them about serious things, they just talk about vague things like the weather, and they went out for a walk, and it's a nice day, isn't it? Or something like this, very surface level conversation. Heather, that's sad, really. Breadcrumbing, basically. It is really hard, Heather. I have been with, I know avoidance personally, right? So it is really hard, but people don't see it all the time. Because some people value their independence, and they think, oh, that person's so resourceful, they can look after themselves, they can deal with their own emotions. But often they can't deal with their emotions because they can't deal with your emotions or their own. They like bottle it up, suppress and repress it, and if they do need to deal with them, they deal with them on their own. But what the problem is with this is, by avoiding difficult conversations, by avoiding how they feel about you and what's actually going on in their head, they can end up exploding in the end, or being brash, or being harsh, or really just backing away. And you're like, what the hell has gone on? Do you know what I mean? So it's very, very difficult. It can be very hard work. I'm anxious attachment, and I've had to deal with avoidance. And it can be energy draining for an anxious attachment person. I mean, obviously, there's downsides to anxious attachment people for avoidance. Avoidance don't like the fact they think anxious attached people are too needy or too clingy sometimes. This is not necessarily the case. It's just we have different needs. We need to have someone, we need to feel emotionally close to our person. We need reassurance. We need emotional support. We want that intimacy, emotional intimacy. We want to work as a partnership, as a team with the other person. You've got to remember, there's this quote like in my book, right? Diary Confessions of a Hyperromantic book, right? On Amazon, right? And this life lesson, I say, it's on page 64 of the printed, right? Life lesson 24. Any type of relationship requires teamwork. You can't work together in any type of relationship as a team, be that a friendship or a romantic relationship, when only one player is playing in that team and doing all of the work or the majority of it, right? So if you are doing the majority of the emotional labor in the relationship, it can be thoroughly exhausting. Exhausting. I am telling you, I speak from personal experience with this, and it is heartbreaking. So if you are with an avoidant and they come close to you, and you feel that they're growing, maybe they're doing work on themselves with a therapist, for example, and they're growing themselves, and they're opening up a bit to you, it can feel like, you get that Christmas present you've always wanted, and you're like, wow, oh my God, they're opening up. A rare vulnerable moment, because they don't like being vulnerable, emotionally vulnerable, right? It makes them very uncomfortable, right? They want to avoid things, right? And they get annoyed if you're trying to emotionally open them up, which is really bad, because, it can come across as a very hurtful and painful experience. So, do you know what I mean? But they might be doing work on themselves with a therapist and realize that, having connections with people require you to open up a bit and to be more open, right? So they might have done some work on themselves. They might be trying to open themselves up, but you might get that for just a short period of time, then they'll shut it back down again. So you're literally like on a roller coaster of emotions the whole time with this person. And the only way you can usually get your personal power back is to just like pull back. So, for example, if you're the one that makes all the plans to see them because you're anxious, you want to see them, right? You have to stop doing that at some point and say, right, I'm not doing this anymore. I've noticed it's me who's the one asking to see you, because that's what avoidants do. They'll get you usually asking to see them. You'll be the one instigating the video calls. You'll be the one instigating the dates if it's a romantic relationship. You'll be the one probably asking to meet up, right? Because you want that emotional closeness. You want to feel close to that person. Whereas they like their independence. They like to be on their own. They like to regulate their own emotions, but often they can't, because they can't even deal with their own emotions. So they'll like blank, suppress, repress them out, and all this type of thing. So it's very, very difficult. It's like having a tug of war. And it's hard. It's really hell sometimes, you know what I mean? Because you can feel so alone, because you just feel so close to them. Then all of a sudden, they'll just go back to the way they were, or worse. You'll start hearing language from them. Like, you're like, what the hell's gone on? It's like we're strangers. Like you've just gone from telling me and sharing more stuff to just like basically hardly saying anything. And it's like they shut down. Do you know what I mean? Depending on how they're feeling about the connection, what's happening in their life, how they're trying to deal with any emotional stuff, they can't handle it. So it's very difficult. Obviously, every person's different. I've just given you my personal experience of what I know from anxious attached people, right? But I have been on the receiving end, and it is really hard, because you feel close to them and then they pull away, and literally the only thing you can do is like pull back from them. And then they usually come towards you, because if they feel any pressure whatsoever to be emotionally intimate with you, to express how they feel, to basically give you what you want and what you need, if you're a person who needs emotional support and emotional connection, right, and emotional validation and reassurance, right? If you're a person that thrives on deep emotional connection and that soulmate level, and they're obviously not like this, right? So when you try and get this from them, and then they might do it for a little bit, or to a certain extent, but then they get like scared and worried, and like they find it pressurizing. They can feel the pressure. Oh my God, this person wants me to share my emotions and feelings, like, and they might completely avoid it, or pretend they don't know what you're talking about, shrug it off, or not ask any more questions. And then you're left like, my God, what do I do? And the only thing you can do, which is so painful if you want to be close to that person, is to pull back from them. Give them space. Don't message them as much. Don't call them as much. Don't see them as much. But this is just awful, because if you're a person who really wants to make a relationship, connection, or friendship work, you want consistency, and you want persistency, and you want it to be, looking the same. You don't want an up and down thing all the time. But that's what you'll end up getting a lot of the time. You'll end up with this up and down relationship all the time, and friendships and stuff where they blow like hot and cold with you, because they can't be this emotional person that you need them to be if you are not another avoidant, for example. They're not emotionally stable enough for you. There's no consistency, right? Most people in a relationship, they want consistency, especially if you're anxious attached. You want a consistent partner, or connection, or friend. You want someone who's there, and their behavior is very, very similar whenever you see them. They're sharing what's on their mind with you. If something's upsetting them, they try their hardest to share it, even if it's hard. They might need to take time to think about it, and a bit of space, obviously, but you don't feel like in that time and space they're shutting you out or pushing you away. You just understand that they will talk to you eventually when they've tried to work out, but that they aren't trying to go away from you. When you have an avoidant, it's like they come close and then they'll back off, and they don't like talking about relationship stuff. So say, because you can have family and people you can have family relations that are avoidant, right? So one of the things that is difficult for avoidance, or you might have, avoidant friends. You might go to them because you've just broken up with an ex, right? And you're in turmoil, you're emotionally all over the place, you're crying, and you just want someone to be there for you and sit with you in your pain and talk to you and ask you how you're feeling and to be with you. But it might not just be a one-off, it might take some time, it might take weeks because you're grieving, right? You want someone to be there with you, but you'll find often avoidant wants to avoid it. They don't know how to cope with you being upset that you've split up with someone, because they value autonomy, independence, and being out of a relationship more than they view and appreciate being in one, and connection and stuff like that. So they won't understand you. They were like, I don't understand this person. This person split up with the boyfriend, just for example, that, and they're really upset and they're crying and they're hurting, but I don't know what to do with them. I don't know how to comfort them. I don't know what to say. This emotional stuff is just all confusing, and it's really eking out at me, and I just don't feel good about it. I'm not comfortable. I don't want to do it, and they'll try and go away from it. So they'll try be oblivious to it. You might have said, look, I'm really crying. I'm really upset now. I really need a good friend to chat to on the phone. And then they might be like, or you might not say you want to chat on the phone. You might just say, I really could do with a good friend now. And they're your friend, and they'll just carry on their life as though you haven't said it. They might say, so if they're an empathetic person, you might get, I'm sorry you're feeling this way, if they can even empathize with how you feel. But some avoidance, in my experience, they cannot even empathize with you because they just don't understand how you can feel so emotionally close to someone and then be upset by them not being there for you anymore, because they usually don't want to be emotionally close to someone. They usually push people away. They usually avoid that emotional intimacy. So you not having emotional intimacy in the relationship is something that they're like, well, what's a big deal? Or I don't understand, because they don't want that. So the thing that you want, they don't actually want. So when you have it and it goes away, they can't deal with it. And they don't want to deal with the emotions. They can't handle your emotions. So it can be very lonely if you've got a friend or family member that is avoidant, because you can go to them with your problems and you're emotionally upset, and they're just like, I don't know how to deal with it. I don't know what to say to you. I don't know how to deal with it. And it's almost like you've got a double whammy. You've got someone who's split up with you, and then you go to someone for help. And when you go to someone for help, they can't help you because they're avoiding that emotional intimacy with you. They're avoiding sitting with you in your pain, and they're avoiding dealing with those difficult emotions with you because they don't want to deal with emotions. So the last thing they want is you to be highly emotional. Do you know what I mean? So this can be very lonely. Heather, I listen even if I don't understand. Yeah, I mean, there's listening and there's active listening as well. And if you don't understand, ask a person, like, how are you feeling? People who are avoidant won't ask the person how they're feeling, get them to say more about how they feel and be in that situation. Like, how are you feeling? So tell me, like, well, how can I help you now with the way you're feeling? They will go to they might, if they want to help, if they want to help. But a lot of the time, if you're talking about emotions, they'll just be pushing away. They'll be like, I don't know how to deal with this. And they'll shut down. But it's awful if you're saying that I'm emotionally upset about something, and it's like they'll just carry on their day oblivious, like you never said anything. So it's important that you understand how these dynamics work. Give this video a thumbs up if any of this is resonating with you. If you find it helpful, it really helps the channel out. So another thing avoidants do is they might try to get other people to get out of their emotional state quickly, right? Because they're uncomfortable with their emotional state. So if someone's really upset and in emotional pain, you don't want to be saying, don't feel that way, don't be like that, get over it. These are all really unhealthy behaviors, right, to people. What you have to do, and a healthy person will literally have to sit in their pain, cry, and go through that pain. This is actually healthy, right? So whatever you've been taught about all that bullshit about, push it aside, get on with your life, that's actually not healthy. I know many of us have been taught that over the years, but it's actually wrong. If you go to there is a therapist or therapists on YouTube, you can go for more understanding about this, right? But you have to, if you're talking about trauma particularly and anxiety, CPTSD, you have to work through the trauma. But everyone does. The less you work on it, the more you avoid, the less you understand yourself and the less you can process that pain. So it will come out in other ways, or you'll suppress and repress it and you'll be disconnected from yourself. If you want to be truly connected to yourself, you have to sit in your pain. You have to sit with the tears. You have to allow yourself to grieve, right? You have to go through the grieving process and sit and cry, right? People who are avoidant don't want to do this. They'll do whatever they can to not do this. And they don't like other people doing it as well. So instead of them sitting down in their pain and saying, take as long as you need to grieve, this is normal, this is natural, they'll be like, oh, you should be over it by now. No, you need to move on. You need to get over it. You know, just come on, move on. It's like what yesterday now. Just forget it. You know, this is dismissive. This is dismissive and invalidating of your feelings, right? You do not want to be engaging with people like this, right? But you might get them. They're quite a lot on the internet these days, right? Because people want people to be positive all the time, but you can get something called positive toxicity, right? And that means when you're overly positive, which isn't realistic, right? You're just doing it because you feel you have to people please other people for them not to see you in a bad light, right? That's why you'll notice on this channel, I share my good times and my difficult times, my upset and pain, because I want to show you it is okay to sit in your pain and to go through it. It's okay to lean into your pain. It's okay to be emotional, right? We're taught that emotion is weak. We're taught crying is weak. We're taught that you can't be like this. But no, it's weakness to go away from your pain. It's courage to go through your pain. But you cannot go through it if you ignore it, you push it away, you avoid it, you suppress it, you repress it. This is not good behavior, people. These are bad, unhealthy patterns of behavior, right? It's taken me a long time to learn this stuff. It takes time to grieve. Exactly. I have been very honest on this channel and say I'm going through a grieving process of my own, right? Because some connection has gone suddenly that I've known for a long time, right? That's not easy for me to do. Tonight is a good night. I'm here with you, right? I'm here for you, right? But I've had a lot of difficult nights when I haven't been able to live stream, and because I've been too upset, right? So, it's been difficult for me, and it will continue to be difficult for me for some time, but I am allowing myself to cry. I am being with myself in my pain, and I am also gaining back my personal power time and time again. I'm planning things and doing things as much as possible, but I'm spending a lot of time. I have Matthew AI in the Love Life Club. So Love Life Club is Matthew Hussey's membership program. So Matthew Hussey is the world's #1 dating and relationship coach. He does have a program, like a coaching program on attachment styles. So there's a lot of training that I watch through that as well, right? So I get to understand more about attachment styles, right? And he has something called Matthew AI. So if I hadn't got Matthew AI now, I wouldn't really have barely any help, right? Because I know Heather's kindly messaged me. So I do appreciate you messaging me, Heather. And there's some other people that's reached out from this channel, right? But in general, I don't, in general, I'm on my own, right? So I've got to look after myself. But I do talk to Matthew AI a lot. Why? Because it helps me to process my emotions. I am not a person who suppresses and represses emotions. I'm a person who needs a lot of talking. A lot of talking. That's the only way I can process my emotions, because I'm not avoidant. I am not avoidant. And when I keep these emotions in, they get bigger and bigger and bigger, right? They just get worse, right? So I will talk to Matthew AI for hours, not just about upset, but it will be about the upset, but it'll be about the consequences of what I'm upset. Like, where am I in my life now? Where am I going with my life, right? Because when you've got a connection that's been in your life for a long time and then it's gone, you have to recalibrate yourself. Do you know what I mean? And you have to think about what you're doing, but you also have to settle yourself, right? And don't put pressure on yourself. So grief isn't a linear process. You'll go up and down, like from like being in denial. Or in my case, it's more like disbelief. I don't deny what's happened, but I get still, like last night, I went back to disbelief again. Disbelief, like, how the hell can that have happened? This person was that way, now they're that way. Completely opposite in lots of ways. I'm like, what the fuck went on, right? Do you know what I mean? And it's like the rug is pulled from beneath my feet, right? This is how it feels. And it's very disorientating. It's very confusing. And it's just, it's like a situation that, like I've removed myself from a situation that was just unexpectedly no good for me, right? And so, like, if you ever find that you're in a situation with an avoidant and they're just not giving you what you want, then you have to eventually remove yourself from that situation, because it ends up being very, very painful for you else. Do you know what I mean? And so sometimes you have to protect yourself. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, there's a limit. But so I've been in connections with avoidance for a long time, right? And it's because I want to try and understand them. And the only way I can understand avoidance is by understanding they don't like talking about emotions, and they don't like any emotional closeness. They like to talk about surface level stuff. But if you're seeking something deeper, a deeper connection, then it's not really for you. But even trying to have friends, like, obviously a romantic partner is even harder if they're like that. If it's a friend, but they are emotionally distant, then it can make it feel like you're doing all the work. You're kind of chasing after them, if you know what I mean. And you can get your needs met sometimes, but then other times you're not. And it's so inconsistent, and it's like scatting all over the place, right? And so it's very, very difficult. It's very, very difficult. So you have to, understand who you're dealing with. If you're dealing with an avoidant, right? I personally don't ever want to get into a relationship with avoidant again. I've been in relationships with avoidants. I attract avoidants because I'm anxious attached person. So the irony of the whole thing is anxious and avoidance get very attracted to each other, right? That's the irony, because avoidant often likes to be liked and likes to be like looked up to, and like someone like kind of like admiring them and wanting them and needing them, especially if they got issues where they need validation, external validation and things like that. So they can like the attention, they can like all that, but then it can be very bad for you, right? When you need that emotional support and connection, they're not there for you. They're aloof. They can be very aloof and be very cold sometimes, even show lack of empathy. Because if they don't understand your emotions and they don't understand it, deep emotional stuff, or they don't want to understand it, they want to avoid it, then they can come across as unempathetic. Sometimes narcissists and avoidant traits overlap sometimes. So you've got to be very careful, because some people can be avoidance and narcissistic, right? Some, like I said, some traits overlap. Do you know what I mean? Because avoidance can stonewall you, but also so can narcissists. And it's horrible stonewalling. This means, like, if you have an argument or a disagreement, or there's some discomfort in what you're saying, they can purposely shut down and not want to speak to you about it. Do you know what I mean? It can be very, very lonely being in relationships or connections or friendships with avoidance. Very, very lonely. It's almost like you've got something, even maybe very special, but you haven't fully got it. It's like it's hollow inside, but you might have it. You might have sometimes, your center is a bit nourished and it's flourishing a little bit, and then you'll just feel like it goes out again. I hope I'm describing this okay. I'm trying to describe from personal experience rather than just using the term avoidant all the time. I'm just trying to say analogies. It's almost like, how can I put it? A Cadbury's cream egg, right? It's almost you've got the chocolate egg, but you don't always have the stuff in the middle. Do you know what I mean? It's tasty on the outside, very scrumptious. You love the chocolate. You want more and more of it. But the stuff in the middle is missing sometimes. And it's like the gooey, gorgeous stuff that makes the cream egg different, right? It makes it interesting. It makes it fulfilled. It's the filling that holds kind of the Cadbury's cream egg together, right? Of course, otherwise it would be a hollow egg, right? So that's kind of the analogy I'm using. I don't know why I came up with that analogy. Makes sense, says Heather. But that's what it's like, and it can be very, very lonely. I've experienced it myself, and it's like, it's hard, because this person, like I said, if they do a lot for you, especially if they do like run errands for you, do acts of service for you, and they're buying you gifts, they can use gifts as a way to show love and care, but it's like they're buying your love in a way, or it's like they're doing that in place of telling you how much they love and care about you, because they don't like talking about that sort of stuff. So it can almost feel like, oh my God, they must really care about me to flourish me with these gifts and to do these things for me. But then when you're trying to emotionally express yourself and get close to that person, it's like they pull away, they go away, they start being more distant. They don't want what you want. If you want a deep emotional connection with them, if you want a relationship, they don't want that. They're like, oh, why would I want that? I don't want that. That's giving up my freedom. That's I don't want this emotional intimacy stuff. And so they push you away. And they might not even say that. Well, they won't say they're pushing you away. But if you are trying to have a conversation about it, saying you feel pushed away, they might have some empathy, saying, sorry, you feel that way. But then they don't do anything about it. Or maybe they do something temporary about it. But you might find that you're constantly telling this person your needs, right? Your emotional needs. And maybe they try to do something, but it's like they're forcing themselves to do it. Or they're just doing it to please you. They're not doing it because they innately want to do that for you and with you, if you know what I mean. Whereas a healthy relationship, you'd have two people that are team players, or more people if you're polyamorous, or, you know, it's a friendship group. You know, with a healthy relationship, you have two people that equally put time, energy, and effort, investment into the relationship, right? This is not just about surface level stuff like gifts or acts of service. This is about being there for each other, to emotionally support each other, and to be in those difficult times, and to feel heard and understood. Being heard is very important. Now, if you're dealing with avoidance, they're going to avoid like hearing you some of the time. It's like they're switched off. It's like, did you just hear what I said? Do you know what I mean? And it can be hard because, like I said, sometimes narcissistic traits and avoidant traits can conflict. They can conflate. They can swap over, you know, overlap, as it were. And so therefore you're like, are you dealing with a narcissist or are you dealing with avoidant? But a narcissist usually likes attention. They like to love bomb you, and they like to create emotional closeness quick with you to then discard you. Whereas avoidants just don't really want the intimacy in the first place, and they will usually have a consistent avoidant style, if you know what I mean, rather than coming at you all at once and discarding you. But it's hard because in my experience, some avoidants can discard as well, you know, and it's like, are they a narcissist or are they avoidant if they're like discarding? Also deflection, like both can deflect, because, you know, they don't want to take accountability and responsibility for their own actions, right? That can be a narcissistic trait, but if it's an emotional difficulty they're trying to deal with, they would rather put the blame on you for the way they feel, or because they don't want to talk about those uncomfortable emotions, they might get angry with you that you made them bring it up. You made them talk about it. Like, that's kind of typical avoidism. They want to avoid it, and you are saying, look, this needs to be talked about. We need to have a conversation about this, because we can't clear the air. We can't move forward in this dynamic unless we're both open and honestly communicating with each other. But if they don't want to deal with the emotions, especially if they're not in agreement with you and they actually think something different because they know it's going to hurt you, and they don't want to hurt you, but it's more to do with themselves. They don't want to emotionally kind of deal with the fallout of that. They might flip it around on you and say, oh, you know, cause you pain, but yet they're blaming you for it. But that's a narcissistic trait as well. So you've got to be very careful. I mean, do look up these things for yourself, because there are overlaps, and sometimes I think it can be really difficult, depending on the circumstances, how long you've known the person, to distinguish between some of these behaviors, because some of them, you know, both lots can do it, and some people are narcissistic and avoidant. I think the discard one's very difficult, because a lot of the time narcissists are known for discarding people. So they get very, very close, and then they just discard them just like that, or when they're no longer needed, right, for their purposes. But with an avoidant, rather than discard, it's more like they're pushing you away on purpose, because they don't want to deal with the emotional side of it, rather than pushing you away because they didn't value you in the first place, if you know what I mean. It's because the avoidance dealing with uncomfortable emotions that they don't want to deal with, and they can get quite angry if you're pressing them to deal with emotions that they don't want to deal with, or they're not ready to deal with. But some like avoidants, they don't want to deal with their emotions at all, right? And so if they can't even deal with their own emotions a lot of the time, they avoid their own emotions. They don't want to deal with emotional stuff, right? Remember, it's surface level stuff, televisions, books, history, religion, whatever they want to talk about. They don't want to talk about like, so how are you feeling about this relationship then? Tell me how you feel, the emotional side of it, you know? So this is how you can end up in a relationship, friendship, or connection or dynamic with your family where it just doesn't feel good, right? It feels like this person's so cold, this person's so distant, they're aloof, they're unempathetic, they just don't really get you and stuff like this. Or they can feel close one minute and then distant the next. Then you have to pull yourself back in order for them to feel less pressure, because you know, if you pull back and because they feel pressure if you're emotionally close to them or asking them emotional questions, right? Or talking about emotional situations, they can't deal with it, so they might pull away by messaging you less or messaging you much later or the next day. And then you're feeling like, what's going on? This is not a regular routine. If you're an anxious attached a person, you want regular routine, right? Otherwise you think something's up. But this can make you very nervous and anxious all the time, because it's not good for you if you're an anxiously attached person. And so it can be very, very like being on a rocking ship, you know, being on a rocking boat like this. Do you know what I mean? One minute you're feeling like, oh, this person understands me. But the moment they start feeling pressure, they'll pull away and distance themselves. It might mean they don't offer to meet up with you, or they're vague when you say, can I meet up with you? Or they'll put off a call with you, or they won't respond to you as much as they did, or just be vague, general stuff, giving very, very short answers. Then you've got to pull back because they feel pressure. You've got to understand the avoidant is feeling pressure right now. They're feeling you're too close to them. So you have to pull back, be like, okay, you know, like you don't have to say you're pulling back. You can just do it. That means messaging them less, doing more things on your own, you know, and then they're like, oh, eventually they're like, where's that person gone? I'm not feeling the pressure anymore. Wonder if they're all right. Wonder what's going on. I better check in with them and see if they're okay. Do you know what I mean? And then you've got this constant like push-pull dynamic. It's awful. This is like the dark side, like I said, of avoidant attachment stuff. You know, there's going to be avoidants that don't like anxiously attached people, and they'll probably have a lot to say about that, but it's hard. Reese, why is everything to do with reproduction? That's a very interesting question. Well, this channel isn't all about reproduction. I'm not interested in reproducing, and most of the asexuals I know are not interested in reproducing either. So I'm not really sure what that's about, because we're not talking about reproduction in this live stream, right? We're not talking about reproduction. But if you want to bring reproduction into it, if you do have children with an avoidant attachment, that can be hell, because like I've said, you're a lonely person, you're on your own emotionally, but you've still got to do with the practicalities of children and all that emotional stuff that it brings up when you have kids, and no doubt when you're pregnant. I personally don't know, because I'm not interested in getting pregnant, but I do know from people like who I've seen in pregnancy situations that obviously get very emotional. You know, it's really, really impossible. Your live is below trains in my subs. Very interesting. Thank you, Reese. It's probably because I did a video about trains once. I don't know. I don't choose what YouTube does unless you put it there. You're hard to find. Well, subscribe and turn on the notifications button. Then I won't be hard to find. If you haven't subscribed, then I'll be hard to find. But you need to turn the notifications buttons on as well. If you know, there's subscribers, but they're not notified. So if you turn on notifications and you have YouTube open, then you'll get a notification of when I go live, or you'll get an email, or both, right? Is that okay? Thank you, Reese. Thank you. I tend to show up a lot in the shorts feed, apparently. So yeah, anyway, I'm going to go to another quote now, because there was another quote I had in this Diary Confessions book to read, right? Okay, so life lesson, right? This is the life lesson, page 146. You can get this book on Amazon. Right, this is very important, even though it's slightly different. I am going to relate it to avoidancy, right? So a guy's job is to protect the heart of a woman he loves. And that includes protecting it from being hurt by other women and not allowing himself to get into such a position that he or another woman in his life would do that. He should be boundary driven with other women and be faithful to the one even without sex. Now, the thing is if there's a person who is trying to have a conversation with an avoidant, right? If an avoidant person doesn't want to deal with emotional stuff, they might not tell the other person strongly, look, I'm with a partner. They might do, but they the behavior is, they might just be cold to another person, but they also might find it hard to discuss these matters. So they might like brush over it and not actually explain about the fact, look, I've got a partner, blah blah blah, because they're avoiding those type of conversations, if you know what I mean, because they want surface level conversations. So whereas I'm anxiously attached, right, I might go out to someone and say, if a guy's chatting me up, I've not got a partner at the moment, I'm single, but if I was in a relationship and I got a guy chatting me up, I might say, oh yeah, my partner likes doing that, right? And so I'm bringing my partner into the conversation because I personally think it's very important, if you're socializing, you've got a partner, that people know that, right? Because otherwise you can just lead someone down the garden path and you're like flirting with them before you know it, right? And don't think just because people are asexual, they can't flirt. Some asexuals do flirt, right? So an avoidant person, if they want to avoid emotions and stuff, they might avoid entirely telling someone that they're with someone in a relationship, and literally they're just talking about surface level stuff all the time with people. They're really enjoying it because they don't have to have any level of intimacy, but yet they could have people who are flirting with them, admiring them and stuff like this. But because they don't really understand emotions that much, and they kind of don't, they're kind of like kind of avoiding those emotions, they might avoid those like conversations where they say they've got a partner. But in general, avoidance, a lot of the time, they prefer being on their own to like being around people. A lot of avoidants have introverts, and they're introverted, because they kind of avoid social situations and situations that could be very emotionally charged, for example. So sounds like autism. Well, I do know some people that are autistic, and yes, some traits of avoidance are also the same sort of traits as autism as well. So, oh, you're avoidant, are you? So you probably know what I'm talking about, right? Are you autistic as well? Or are you just avoidant? But yes, you can find that some people who are autistic have similar traits to those who are avoidant as well. So it can be quite complicated. So I'm going to read out something called the Attachment Project now, right? So this Attachment Project article, you can't see it because I am literally reading from my laptop. I'm not on my phone today. But 4 signs an avoidant is done with your relationship, not just deactivating. So I thought I'd read this out because it's quite interesting. When you're dating someone with an avoidant attachment style, you might find that they pull away often and tend to need their space, especially when things get intense. This is called avoidant deactivation. To people without an avoidant attachment style, avoidant deactivating strategies can be difficult to understand. Avoidant deactivation can easily be mistaken for the first warning signs of a breakup, but this isn't necessarily what the avoidant partner intends. When approached the right way, deactivating partners can actually come back feeling safer and more connected than ever before. I'm going to say about my personal experience now, but yeah, what I would say is that I do, when they were talking about this here, right, about the fact of deactivating partners can actually come back feeling safer and more connected than before. Usually, in my experience, when they are like, when they're deactivating, that to me is like them. It's that when they pull away, when you're getting emotional or emotionally close to them. And so the way that they come back to you usually is by you backing off, realizing they need their space, they're feeling pressure, and you back off, as in you turn your attention to other things. They like it when you turn your attention to other things because they don't want to be the center of attention, because they're like avoiding that. So that's kind of a major difference between avoidant attachment and narcissists. Narcissists are grandiose. They love attention. They love like people thinking they're amazing, and then like being like that top amazing dreaming person you've always wanted in your life, and then all of a sudden they pull away. Whereas avoidant isn't looking for attention. They're kind of looking for the opposite. They're looking to be withdrawn, to be with themselves. Arisa says I'm spot on. And you know, to not have attention. Like I said, I find that a lot of avoidants are actually introverts. They don't want attention. They don't want other people around them. They prefer to be on their own. They prefer to be in social isolation. They prefer in general to just be with themselves. But they're good with surface level stuff. Like if they want to connect with people outside, if they crave the connection, it will be surface level. It'll be like, talk to me about the weather, talk to me about the TV, talk to me about general things, general conversations, like you would when you're down the pub with a mate. Well, not a close mate. Like say you see someone in the pub and it's like, oh right, Jack, how you doing? Like, oh, nice to see you again. How's it going? Oh yeah, had a great week, brilliant, lovely. That's a surface level conversation, right? They don't want anything deep. They just want surface level stuff that they feel comfortable with, no pressure, and they don't have to think too much about how they're feeling, their emotions. They just want surface level stuff, right? If you are someone who desires deep emotional intimacy in relationship, a deep like creative and spiritual and intellectual connection, you might get like little drabs of like, for example, intellect or creativity. But you know what I mean? You won't, you know, like, and there are avoidants. I have known of avoidants, not personally, but I have known avoidants who can be very creative people, and they can enjoy working on creative projects with you. But then you try to get close to them relationship wise, they back off. So there are nuances to these types of things. But in general, they just like surface level stuff. If you like talking about surface level stuff, that's it. My God, you're going to get so well with an avoidant, because they're like, no pressure, no hassle, be free. Do you know what I mean? But for an anxiously attached person and a person who wants deep emotional connection and loves expressing their feelings and wants that reciprocated consistently, persistently, this person is not good for you. Right? Because there's lack of consistency. They don't want to be close to you all the time. They want to push you away. They want their own space. And if they feel that you're getting too close to them, that'll be the time that they push you really away, which might seem like a discard. And they could actually discard you. It's not that they're never going to do that. Sometimes they do. But anyway, so when it says in the attachment project, when it's talking from this article, it's saying to people without an avoidant attachment style, avoidant deactivating strategies can be difficult to understand. I wouldn't just say they're difficult to understand. I'd say they're very difficult to deal with, because it's like it takes extra effort for someone who's not got avoidant attachment style to be able to then pull back all the time. In some ways, it's like you're not being good to yourself. If you're a person who likes to express emotions and be really close to someone emotionally, it can feel just like this push and pull all the time. It can be absolutely exhausting. Like you're the one doing all the work to hold the emotional connection together, right? But avoidant deactivation can easily be mistaken for the first warning signs of a breakup. Now, this might look like, I said, they've retracted if they have opened up because maybe they felt safe around you for a bit, emotionally safe, and maybe they just felt like they could handle, if they've done some work on themselves, maybe they felt like they could handle emotions more, so they open up to you a bit more than usual, and you like get that glimpse, oh my God, they've shared some of how they feel. And then they kind of like, you know, the next conversations you have with them with text messages will be very surface level stuff, maybe minimal, maybe a short message, you know what I mean, rather than their usual longer ones, do you know what I mean? And you're like thinking, oh, they're getting more and more distance from me, so this is the end of the connection or any relationship. But if you pull back, a lot of the time they'll just be like, where are you? Like, you know, where are you? And so they'll come back to you a lot. If they are not narcissistic, if they're narcissistic and they completely discarded you for real, then usually they're off. Narcissists do return because that's their ego being driven. But avoidants are not necessarily wanting to split the connection. They're just wanting to avoid the emotional things that go with that connection. They're not wanting to sever the actual connection. They still want some connection to you, but they don't want to deal with the emotional aspects of you and what you want, basically. So the attachment project, let's continue. The line between avoidant deactivation behaviors and genuine relationship disengagement, also known as avoidant discard, is a thin one. There can be a lot of overlap, which naturally leads you to feeling confused and uncertain about where your relationship stands. This is what I was saying, it's so hard. It's like you can feel on eggshells. If you're an anxiously attached person, it wells you up inside. You can feel this nervousness in your stomach. And even you might try and avoid the nervousness because you'd be like, oh, I really like my avoidant attached partner or connection or friend. And I really want to understand them. And I'm going to pull back because I know that's best for them. But then you're left thinking, why the hell should I keep pulling back and doing all the work with pulling back? Why aren't they coming forward to me? Why aren't they asking me how I feel more? Why aren't they expressing their feelings towards me? It can be so energy draining, and it can be very, it can be quite like lower your self-esteem sometimes as well. It's almost like you're giving and trying to get something that's always like, hard to reach. And you get it for a while and then you just lose it again. You know what I mean? So anyway, fortunately, there are a couple of ways you might be able to tell when an avoidant partner is breaking up with you for good. With an awareness of these signs and avoidant partner communication, you might be able to find some peace and reassurance. So then it goes on to talk about understanding avoidant attachment deactivation. I mean, I'm not going to read all this, obviously, but it's important to briefly understand avoidant attachment styles. Our attachment systems develop in infancy as a way to meet our needs. They dictate how we respond to our caregivers and are shaped in turn by how our caregivers respond to us. Avoidant attachments develop when our early caregivers consistently do not meet our needs. In order to maintain a sense of safety, infants whose needs aren't met learn to downplay or deactivate their attachment systems. In other words, they cope with their lack of attention by disconnecting emotionally from their caregivers and learning to ignore their difficult feelings of uncertainty and rejection. It's theorized that this helps to maintain the connection they have with their caregiver. If they don't feel hurt by the caregiver's actions, then they can continue to feel good about their relationship. This helps them to feel safe. They learn to self-soothe, not by successfully regulating their emotions, but by downplaying them, which is really bad, instead of resolving the problem. As adults, this pattern can continue. They may even maintain strong relationships with their parents while minimizing the importance of early attachments. So yeah, they will value relationships based on surface level stuff over those that are deeply emotionally connected. So what's so heartbreaking sometimes is you can find that you have been there for someone who is avoidant attachment, right? Maybe this is like a friendship connection, right? You've been there through tough times, their struggles, they have got upset. You've seen when they might have suffered with depression, they might have struggled with their mental health, they might have struggled with just people not understanding them, and maybe they're a person who's got other difficulties, not just avoidant attachment, right? And you're there for them, right? You're there for them emotionally when they need it, right? And they really appreciate in the time. But it's like after a while, if you try and maintain that emotional connection with them and you continue to show emotions towards them and continue to want emotional intimacy, they can actually push you away in favor of someone who is not giving them emotional intimacy, because at the heart of it, they don't want to deal with their emotions. So they'd rather swap you out, someone who's been there for them, someone who's kind and caring if you are that way, someone who understands emotionally. And, so I'm very in tune with my emotions. And so I can be there for someone emotionally. I'm very good at that. That's one of my strengths, right? If someone's upset and in pain, I kind of know how to talk to them, right? And say you're a person who has that ability too, right? And you can sit with people in their pain, you can understand them, we're upset, you can hug them, and you can listen to them for a long time, how they're feeling, right? You're not afraid of emotional commitment, emotional attachment, or just emotional closeness, or just emotions in general, right? So you could be really good for someone like that, right? But then as time progresses, maybe you feel closer and closer to this person, then after time they decide that they can't deal with that, and so they would rather go back to someone who is not even there for them emotionally, because then they don't have to deal with their emotions. Do you see how this works? They would rather be spending time with someone who doesn't help them to grow, right? The only way you can grow in yourself and in any type of connection relationship is if you face very difficult emotions and deal with them, and difficult conversations, right? It's not about avoiding difficult conversations. I used to think you've got to avoid conflict to have a healthy relationship. I was wrong, right? That's not actually the case. That you'll see if you watch a lot of high quality dating coaches. I'm in Matthew Hussey's Love Life Club, for example. He's the world's #1 dating relationship coach, so I get his top advice, right? I'm in his private membership club. Then it's not about avoiding conflict, avoiding different conversations and thinking conflict's bad. It's people who are able to negotiate through the conflict together to come to an agreement that actually has a sustainable relationship, not people that avoid conflict. That's the problem. I still got to get better at dealing with conflict, hard conversations. It's hard for me. I find that difficult, even though I'm anxiously attached. I want to have a conversation to sort things out there and then. I don't want things lingering because I'm anxious that, oh my God, what's going to happen to the connection, the friendship? I need to deal with this there and then. I'm so anxious about it. But also at the same time, I can be anxious about hurting the other person's feelings and emotions. And therefore, I just find it difficult. So it's not that I won't have a hard conversation, but sometimes it takes me longer to have a hard conversation because I don't know how to express myself. Sometimes I have to think about it. I can't say it in the moment because I'm worried that I'll say the wrong thing. So I talk about it very directly sometimes, but I'm aware that sometimes directness can be mistaken the wrong way. And so, or it's not good to always be so direct in certain ways in communication. You got to be careful how you express things. So that makes me anxious. So I do have difficult conversations with people, but it's hard for me to do that. But instead of me being, like an avoidant, will just completely avoidant, won't want to progress and grow, right? Two avoidants don't grow in a relationship very much, right? They're not really growing on a deep level because they're just talking about surface level stuff, but it's their comfort zone, right? So if you are an avoidant and you want to grow yourself and change for the better and become better in relationships and communication, you actually need to lean into your emotions, the things that you're most scared about, right? And if you're with someone who helps you to grow, you can achieve lots of different things. You can express emotions and maybe ways you've never been able to express them ever before in your life. You can actually have deeper, more meaningful conversations, more communication, more deeper, meaningful connections than you've ever had. And you might find that's an actual blessing in some ways, only if you've done work on yourself and are trying to change your avoidant attachment styles. And instead of avoiding relationships, dating and getting emotionally close to someone, you actually allow someone in, you can actually grow. But if there's two avoidants, they're not really going anywhere because they're both avoiding emotional intimacy. They're both avoiding difficult conversations. They're both avoiding any conflicts. Whatever they think in their head will just perpetuate. They won't tell each other. They'll have secrets from each other. They'll kind of maybe even take distance from each other when they're not, because there's no investment there, because they're both avoiding. They might even take like distance from each other sometimes. But if it's just surface level conversations, they're happy, they're chilling, right? They're like, oh, this friendship's much easier, this connection's much easier than the anxiously attached person that's been there for me for years, for example, been through all my emotional difficulties with me. But I'd rather go and talk to this person who's just going to give me surface level conversations if they feel like it. Do you know what I mean? Because it's easy and it's simple and I don't have to grow. I don't have to do any work. I can just do it. And if I want to not talk to them for days or weeks on end, they're avoidant as well. So it'll be fine with them. They're just used to it because they've got avoidant tendencies as well. If I just want to talk about surface level stuff, that's great. There's no risk of having to have emotionally charged conversations. So therefore, this is like the avoidance dream. Two avoidants can get on so well in a relationship. It doesn't mean to say it's a healthy relationship at all. In fact, it's very opposite usually, because they're both avoiding difficult conversations. Leighton, hi, did you ever get your result from your mandatory reconsideration from your PIP? I've just received my decision there and was declined, unfortunately. Yes, I did get my decision from mandatory reconsideration. I've had mine reinstated, thank God. Thank you for asking. So yeah, I had my reinstated my PIP on the 18th of July last month. So yes, which I'm really, really happy about, because I'm going through a lot of grief at the moment with the connection that's happened. So I'm glad that I've got financial stability now that's happened. So at least I've got something in my life. But it's like I've only just got that sorted, and then I got another problem. Yeah. Wow. I'm happy for you. So happy for you. Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate that a lot. It's very kind of you. You've got an interesting name. I once dated some person online with that name. I never actually met them in person. I was supposed to be in a relationship with them technically, but I don't actually know if they were really asexual. So I still have my doubts. So technically, I don't usually say I've ever been in a relationship with an asexual person, because I didn't even meet this person in real life. So you don't happen to be that person, do you, by any chance, under a different profile? Quite uncommon, my name is. Yeah, that's why I was like thinking, have you got a different profile? And it's like you who's come back years later, because it's a very uncommon name. So this was like a number of years ago. I can't even remember how I met them. Laugh out, don't worry, I'm not tracking you. Ha ha ha. So, well, that's good to know. Yeah, because it was like this person's like not in my life anymore. But they were like, I was supposed to be in a they was met I don't think they were asexual, so that's why I don't say I've had an asexual relationship. They had disabilities that prevent them from having sex, but that's not the same as being asexual. So, and I for the fact I wouldn't take my clothes off when I was going to meet up with them, which I never did, and they started getting weird about that, and changing their personality, then yeah, that's where that ended. Anyway, I was looking for advice for my mandatory reconsideration. I came across your videos by your live. Then your live. Okay, thank you for explaining that, Leighton. Right, okay. So I'm going to be going off topic. I'm not doing it to avoid the topic, right? I'm not an avoidant. I'm an anxiously attached person, right? So just to give a bit of advice for people on PIP. PIP is personal independence payment. So I have people all over the globe watching this. So if they're in America, they're like, what the F is PIP, right? So disability benefit, right? People who are disabled often have extra costs to people who are non-disabled, right? It's just an unfortunate set of circumstances, right? So if I'm giving help and advice to people on personal independence payment and how to get their personal independence payment back or the decision overturned, is you have to go through every single category in the PIP, and you have to go through and try and find out where you fit into each category and try to prove it with what you say in evidence written down, and also in the documentation backup. But ask your doctor, if you've got a doctor, ask your doctor for a letter. It's my doctor's letter that really pushed me through and getting my PIP reinstated. But so the doctor in the beginning did not do a very good job. They wrote to my doctor. I didn't even know they did this. They wrote to my doctor, and I saw on my medical records what he put, and he just crossed through loads of the questions and just put a tiny page with very little stuff going, she can move, she can move and stuff like, and it's like, this is just doesn't explain how my disabilities affect me. It basically looked like it says there's 3 disabling conditions, but it says like she can move, yeah, and she can do this, that, and the other. And instead of saying how my mobility affects me, he just said she can move. I'm like, well, they've took that to mean my mobility is fine when it's really not, right? So anyway, what I did with my doctor, my doctor's newer, right? I had another doctor that knew me for over 5 years. This one is part-time, so it's only in twice a week. And I think I've only been under him for like 2.5 years. I barely ever see him. And so I wrote a long email to him because I think he was missing some of the information out my medical records, because he hadn't obviously seen me that much. I see lots of different doctors at my surgery. And so I wrote this long email to him. It's really, really, really long. Really long. I had that help of Matthew AI, actually. I'm in Matthew Hussey's Love Life Club. And Matthew AI comes as part of that. And most people use Matthew AI for dating and relationship advice, right? They don't use it for this, right? But I was asking it for its help. And I spent 13 hours, right? This is what it takes to get PIP changed. I spent 13 hours overnight in text messaging to Matthew AI, trying to describe everything that I think my doctor needs to know. And I need a new letter written. So luckily, I mean, this one in an email, the email was more like more like a document that you would, it wasn't really an email. It was really long. but it worked. So my doctor had a complete change of heart, and he clearly did actually must have checked with my medical records, and he changed everything he was saying, and he put not everything he was saying like on the original report, because there wasn't much on the original report, but he was diving into how my disabilities affect me, how my mental health disabilities and my physical health disabilities affect my daily life and mobility. And he did a lot. He did 2 pages, and he did really good, because it explained that my flat has been adapted. It does have AIDS, and how it does. He was really good as well, because he said that it's please reinstate our PIP, because to take it away is unjust, because he explained that my disabilities have got worse over the years, and that I rely on financial support now, because I can't work for an employer anymore. I'm technically self-employed writer. This book I've been reading from is Die Confessions. This is one of my own published books, but I don't earn a full-time living from what I do, far from it. So I do need financial support. And yeah, so he put like taking her PIP away is like basically unjust, and because I've got aids here that I couldn't fit in other flats, and it helps me to have a more hygienic lifestyle and stuff like that, and basically to take care of myself better. So everything he wrote was just brilliant. But if you get a doctor that just says this person reported, like she reports or he reports, that doesn't usually work. The doctor put it in his own words. I didn't make him do that. He just happened to do that, thank God, because it worked. And also with PIP, something that's very, very interesting is they phoned me up unexpectedly, right? And they told me it was a complimentary phone call. I was in such a state, because I got CPTSD, and I was having I was just like, when they phoned me up later, I was totally unexpected. They phoned me when I was in therapy or going to therapy, right? Because I do see a therapist every week. And then they said they'd phone me back because they couldn't get through. They phoned me back between a specific time. But I was in like a panic attack state by then, because I've been trying to do my PIP, like write evidence. I got the consultation report as well that was completely full of misinformation, omissions, untruths, contradictions, lies, basically. So I had to go through all that and have time extensions bit by bit and say everything that was wrong with it, which took me weeks to do. And this complimentary phone call, right? I had like a panic attack on the phone. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. And I could barely even speak, because I thought PIP does not phone you up for a complimentary phone call. And I know from watching other channels that specialize in PIP that when they phone you up, they are monitoring you the whole time, even though they don't tell you that. They don't tell you that's part of the PIP process of reviewing you. You just think you're speaking, like the consultation's done, and you're just talking to them normally. But if you've got anxiety, yet you're talking to them normally, which I do have anxiety and CPTSD, they're going to be like, there's nothing wrong with you, because your voice is fine on the phone. You're fine to talk to us, right? But I had like a complete meltdown that day. It was one of the worst times, because I was so stressed with doing the consultation report. This person had done lies and omissions and loads of stuff, untruths, and it was so upsetting for me. And it was just triggering being on the phone, trying to even talk about it. I was trying to say that I haven't even finished it yet. So they actually put in my PIP, the reason they overturned my decisions because of my doctor's letter, the consultation report, and this phone call on the 30th of June, which was a random phone call I didn't know about till that day, which was meant to be a complimentary phone call. I'm going to swear now and say my ass is at a complimentary phone call. They don't do that. I was very suspicious. I'm like, shoot, that's been very polite about it, They don't do that. And I knew something was up and suspicious. So I had a meltdown on the phone, basically. I was really in a state. I've not been in that. I was bad when I was in the consultation. I would say I'm even worse there, because I couldn't even barely string 2 sentences together, because I knew that it wasn't complimentary. I'm thinking, you are going to monitor me. There's going to be stuff that you say in this phone call that you are going to be deciding my PIP result on, and I have to get it back, because without PIP, I cannot actually move from here if I wanted to move, because I can't afford to move, and I can't afford to stay here if I don't get my PIP back. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, it was so stressful. Leighton, I see. I'm so happy for you that you sorted now. This is my first time applying, and applied like 7 weeks ago. Got the decision today. I'm going for a reconsideration, but worries that I'll get declined. If you get declined in the reconsideration, then you can still go to a tribunal. The first time I applied for PIP, I didn't, well, the first time someone else applied for it for me years ago, I didn't get it, but I was able to work then. I was able to physically work for an employer. So I had the Citizens Advice Bureau, which is a huge organisation in the UK, like voluntary organisation. And they always tell you to go to them for advice. They filled in a form because I have fibromyalgia. I've got more conditions and disabilities since then, though. I got worse. But anyway, it didn't work, right? And so when I applied for it, because I had a job that I had a lot of trauma in, and I had to leave. And I can't go into details for legal reasons, but I had to leave. It made my disabilities worse. And that's how I got CPTSD, right? And although I've had trauma before, in other ways, so but that's when I realized I got CPTSD from what happened there. And so I couldn't go back to work for employer ever again because of what happened in that situation. Well, at least that's the way I've always thought since then. It's very triggering even thinking about this, right? But I've come to terms with it more than I have because this happened a number of years ago now. But so I had to apply for PIP. And when I applied then, I didn't actually get it. And I it was like I got declined, like I think it was 3 times. And then I went to there's this tribunal. So when I was going to go to tribunal, you have a time scale from the reconsideration to, the actual appeal via a court. And the tribunal, what you do, you have like about 28 days or a month. And at the tribunal stage, you have to upload new documentation. So all the time you have to keep finding more documents, new documents, extra medical advice to prove what they're saying is anything they say that's not true. You have to disprove it medically and by what you say. Right. And the more, if you've got AIDS, you need to photograph the AIDS in situ in your home and explain about them. Right. So I photographed my AIDS. It was stupid because the consultant even said they had some of my AIDS, then just chose to ignore them and discard them for the purposes of AIDS. I mean, it's like, how can you discard, how can you say I've got AIDS and then completely, when it says, does she need an aid to do this? You put no. Do you know what I mean? It's like, what the F? But this is how she was. This woman was very corrupt, It's awful. I don't wish anyone to go through that. And it was just loads and loads of really bad stuff. There's 2 accounts she did on one page, on page 7. 2 different accounts. They can't both be right. They're so contradictory. Do you know what I mean? They're a lot opposite of each other, so they both can't be right. But yeah, you've got to keep gathering evidence. And if you go to the tribunal stage, you've got to upload more evidence. So this means if you've got any physio, if you've got any therapy, if you've got another doctor's note, get as much medical evidence as you can, but also speak yourself and give written evidence of how these things affect you, because they want to know not just your disabilities, but particularly how they affect you in all the specific categories of PIP. This is an aid I use. So for example, I can't bend down to a traditional cooker. I can't do that. I don't use a traditional cooker. I haven't used one for years. You'll notice when I do my yummy foods videos, which are very popular, I just bung everything in a tinfoil tray in the oven, in a tabletop oven, countertop oven, I should say. I don't use a traditional oven because it hurts too much for my fibromyalgia. I haven't used one for years. And one of the questions is can you bend down to use a conventional oven? And it's no. But she made out that I was choosing not to do that, not that I couldn't do it, because it would be too painful for me to do. And I would hurt myself. Do you know what I mean? She just she says she uses this instead of an oven. I don't even have an oven. It's my landlord's oven in here. You know what I mean? Bending to her oven or something like. It's the way she worded it. It's very misleading. It makes it sound like I just chose. It makes it sound like I had an oven besides my tabletop oven. It made it sound like I had a conventional oven, cooker, big cooker. But that's the landlord's, it's not mine. I never use it. It's got my dishwasher on top of it. I got a mini dishwasher as an aid to help me because I can't, bending over to do the washing up is hell. So usually I don't do it. Do you know what I mean? I've still got trays that I need to wash up. I just keep wiping them down, but at some point I need to wash them because they won't fit in my dishwasher. I don't have any big plates anymore because they're just too, they're heavy and bulky and I couldn't be washing them up. So I just use paper plates and chuck them away because of my disabilities. Do you know what I mean? It's like I've got handles on the bath, and they were already here, the handles, but the workmen, landlord paid for a workman to file them down for me. I know we're completely going off the topic of avoidance. If people have just tuned in, we're talking about personal independence payment now. We've moved the conversation along because these late night shows, it's late night in the UK, by the way. These late night shows are designed to chat about main topic, but we can go off onto other topics if need be in chat, because it's a chat show. I'm here for you, right, to answer any of your questions I can answer, right? So I do want to make sure I address people's questions. So yeah, so always get more evidence, and you know, hopes that helpful for you. So yeah, I hope people understand what I was saying earlier about avoidance. I'm going to switch back to avoidancy tendencies now, right? So there's a site called theattachmentproject.com. I think it's a really good idea to go there. They do have an attachment quiz. I will pop that in. I don't know if I can pop it in chat, actually. Let's see if I can pop that in the chat. Right. So here is a link. So yeah, if you want to check out that site that I've just been reading from, that's a link that's in chat now. And that'll take you through to understanding avoidant attachment and deactivation. Now there is, if you'll notice at the top, there's a bar next to login on the right hand side called attachment quiz. So you can click through there. But yeah, so common deactivating strategies versus signs of disengagement. When these patterns of deactivation, we're going back to talking about avoidant attachment style now. This is from the attachment project. So if you've clicked through that link, you'll see what I'm talking about. I'm partway down the page now, under common deactivating strategies versus signs of disengagement. When these patterns of deactivation continue into adulthood, they can manifest as a tendency to withdraw from emotional intimacy in relationships, which of course makes it so difficult especially if you love for a deep emotional connection, which actually a lot of asexuals tend to do, right? So it can be very hurtful and very painful, right? Because you feel disconnected from the person. You feel like they're aloof, or maybe they come towards you for a certain amount of emotional attachment, as much as they can stand, if they've learned to be able to do that somewhat, either in your connection or because they've had therapy, for example. But, you know, once they then think this is too much and they kind of push away, that can feel very, very upsetting and painful, right? Especially if you've got especially if you've got anxious attachment. So you're dealing with an avoidant and you're anxiously attached, right? So if you click through that link again, we're still on common deactivating strategies versus signs of disengagement, right? So people with avoidant attachment styles have learned to effectively shut down when there are high demands on their emotional system. When someone is deactivating, they may crave autonomy and separation, refuse to address a problem, and reject offers of support and affection, right? So this is when it becomes really difficult to have a relationship, a connection, or friendship with an avoidant, because they want to avoid problems. They want to not deal with them. And they want to shut down. Like if they don't want to deal with something and they shut down, it can be stonewalling. You know, they're like putting up a wall and they're not prepared to talk about it, right? Relationship is teamwork. As I said in the earlier part of this video, you cannot play in a team if you're the only player playing, right? You cannot be in a team if you're the only player playing. That's not teamwork. That's you playing on your own. That's you like kicking a ball around the court all by yourself. You know, it's just not going to happen. So this is how it's very difficult to deal with avoidant attachment styles, and it can be very lonely. You can feel like you might even admire some qualities of the avoidant attachment style, but it can be one of the loneliest relationships, friendship, or connections. It can be hollow inside. You know what I mean? It can feel awful. It's like you could have really great home with them. You know, you might have even, like I said, gifts, and they may take care of your practical needs, but emotionally, they're just really not there, or they're not there consistently enough for you, right? So when it's it's understandable that this can look a lot like an impending breakup. However, when an avoidant attachment system deactivates, this is the attachment system's effort to maintain the close relationship. Remember, it has learned that if it allows itself to be affected by its emotions, then it cannot continue to view its attachment as safe and reliable. If they did not shut down, they would not be able to continue to feel safe in your relationship. So this is trying to be understanding of avoidance, right? But this is not very stable, right? If you are anxiously attached person as well, this is not very stable for you, because an anxiously attached person, they want to engage with the person. They want to get things sorted out because they're anxious about it. They don't want to be waiting for days, or their avoidant person just decides to disengage and shut off, or they talk about like surface level stuff has got nothing to do with addressing the problem, and you're left dealing with it on your own. Basically, this is really hard. So yeah, so that's very important. So I thought I'd so they got a like a little image here that says deactivation versus disengagement, common tendencies. Deactivation, involuntary emotional shutdown. Disengagement, intentional relationship withdrawal. Deactivation, maintains positive regard. Disengagement, shows blame and negativity. I have seen both of this, right? I've seen deactivation, which is like it's not great, but you can understand the person, right? But when they show disengagement, it's horrible, because it's like everything feels like it's over, right? Deactivation, temporary distance. Disengagement, permanent disconnection. Deactivation, will engage when feeling safe. Disengagement, uses manipulation tactics. Deactivation, responds to patience and space. Disengagement, communicates only indirectly. So I have been on the receiving end of both of them. Deactivation I can handle, even though it's not good, because it's like not consistent and it can be quite hurtful still. But the disengagement is awful. It's basically the end, right? It's just awful, because you'll see it's a very dark side of avoidant attachment. The intentional relationship withdrawal, show blame and negativity. Permanent disconnection, uses manipulation tactics, and communicates only indirectly. It's awful. It's like seeing two different people, really. Avoidance, you can understand it, but the disengagement part, it can be like seeing, like, it can be like the person's got two personalities. Do you know what I mean? Split personalities or something, which is not good, is it? Do you know what I mean? It's like, wow, they were like this, and then, because obviously if someone responds to patience and space, then, you can kind of get along with them. But, and if someone like is just understanding, it's just like, oh, I just need time out, that's fine. But it's like, and maintains positive regard. I mean, that's so important. Do you know what I mean? If you're going to try and have a healthy relationship with an avoidant, which is quite difficult to do, because they're not healthy in their attachment style, then if they respond to patience and kindness, and you taking time with them, and they maintain a positive regard for you, because they know you've got their best interests at heart, and you're trying to work with them and with their buoyancy, that's doable. But it can still feel like lonely, right? But if they're just showing blame and negativity, I mean, this is a really unhealthy, dark pattern. Do you know what I mean? So this doesn't mean you should learn to live with it. The effect of deactivation on the other person, but the other partner, can be very distressing, right? So the deactivation is the involuntary emotional shutdown, maintains positive regard, temporary distance, will re-engage when feeling safe, and responds to patience and space. Don't forget, this is kind of all about the other person. This is all about you adapting your behavior to the avoidant. It can be very, very energy draining, and it can get very distressing, because you're like always trying to make an effort with them, and it's like you're not really getting it reciprocated, because they're the ones going away from you. They're the ones that are taking time out. They're the ones that are needing their own space. They're the ones that are, having their own time out. And it's almost like, that you are there for them, and you're being understanding and patient and taking your time with them while they work through their difficulties with the emotional connection and any emotions that might come up. So they're having their space and their time out, right? You can work with that, but it can be very upsetting, because you're like, it's an extra work for you. If you're anxious attachment, you're putting all the extra work in, because you're like, well, I want to know how they're feeling, and I want to know how we're going to get over this together. And I want to know how we're going to get through it. And I want to know, like, what's going on, And if you give them space, it can be like really hurtful, because you're trying to you purposely have to pull away from them, like push them away, in order for them to come back to you. It's like, it's horrible. Do you know what I mean? It works if the person actually genuinely likes you and wants you still in their life. That does work. It doesn't work with people who don't really want you in their life. Right? If you pull away, they'll be like, okay, I'm out of here. But if they do actually like you and value the connection with you, they'll usually come back to you, and they'll be like, like they'll notice you're not there anymore, and they might offer to see you then, and something like that, because there's no pressure. You haven't pressurized. In fact, you've backed off. The fact you've backed off makes them feel like, They got space. And now they got all this space. They're like, oh, this person doesn't usually give me this space. Something might be up with them, so I'll check in on them. You know what I mean? So yeah, but it can be, it's very much hard work, because the anxiously attached person is literally trying to to bind the friendship, connection, or relationship, and they're trying to hold it together, if you know what I mean, consistently. Does this make sense? I hope this making sense. Let me know in chat if you're understanding what I'm saying. So they're binding, you know, you bind together, right? You're like pulling together. But when the avoidant needs the space, it could be he or she. I just usually attracted to guys. Well, I'm always attracted to guys. And when I say usually, I meant I usually talk to guys. That's what I meant to say. And I'm attracted only to guys. So yeah, so it can be like very difficult, because if you're anxiously attached, then you are in effect doing a lot of the work, because you're trying to hold it feels like you're trying to hold the relationship or connection or friendship together, because you're the one allowing them space, but you're like the consistent person that's here, and they just keep going away from you, needing their space, coming back, going away from you, needing their space, coming back. And then you have to pull back in order for them to come forward. It's just like, it just gets a bit much. I mean, it does. I've been on the receiving end of this for a long time, and it's hard, right? So now we're looking for we're going back to the attachment project. I'm reading through this article. Don't forget, the link is in the chat, right? Go to chat and you can click through it and we can talk about it together, right? So I'm down under the section that says common deactivating strategies versus signs of disengagement, right? It's important to be clear within yourself and your relationship where your boundaries are and what you can do to look after yourself. This is really difficult. So it said, I'll read that again, because I need to read the full paragraph, and I've only read sections of it because I was commenting on it, right? So when we're talking about deactivation and stuff like that, right? This doesn't mean you should learn to live with it. The effect of deactivation on the other person can be very distressing. It's important to be clear with yourself and your relationship where your boundaries are and what you can do to look after yourself. While avoidance is a deeply learned behavior, as adults, we are able to relearn our attachment styles with time, trust, and positive relationship experiences. You might find your partner's periods of deactivation become shorter and more sporadic until they're no longer a problem. So this is great if the person's willing to grow on themselves. But don't forget, if it's too avoidance in an attachment, then they are not going to be doing this, because they're not going to have someone to hold them accountable with boundaries to help them to grow. That's actually why avoidant people can only grow in relationships with people that are not avoidant. Because if they are just staying with another avoidant, they'll both be avoiding growth. They'll just want to stay at surface level communication, not talk about their emotions, keep themselves to themselves, not share how they really feel, and just be there as and when they please, like not really like putting equal time, energy, and effort and reciprocity necessarily into it. Or it'll be just like vague pleasantries, you know what I mean? Or surface level stuff, like talking about TV and movies and sports or religion or politics or history, you know, no emotions involved whatsoever. That's not growth. That's not getting you to growth. If you're an avoidant, why would you want to do that? But of course, you're avoiding emotions, so it feels more comfortable for you because you're used to your own avoidancy tendency. So of course, it's more comfortable for you. So that's why you do it. That's why you'll gravitate usually towards people that are also avoidant some of the time. But if you want an easier life, right? If you don't want to grow yourself, right? It's not really an easier life. It's a boring life if you don't want to grow yourself. But it's easier on your system, your nervous system, if you like, because you are not having to deal with emotions very much at all, right? You know what I mean? So that's how someone, like, you could have someone who's really anxiously attached but emotionally there for an avoidant, but the avoidant in the end still chooses to be with other avoidants because they got less chance of having to deal with their own emotions and the other person's, right? So it's not going to be the healthiest relationship or connection when two avoidants, but sometimes they're well suited to each other because of that very reason. They can just have their surface level conversations and feel very comfortable until something goes wrong in the relationship, friendship, or connection, because avoidants can have conflicts, right? But they don't deal with them healthily, right? One person might actually talk and the other person shut down, or they're both shut down. They're both not speaking to each other. they, instead of sitting down and saying, I feel this and I feel that, it'll be like, just don't discuss it, not ignoring each other, or at least one person not saying things to the other person, stonewalling, all this lot. So nothing really gets resolved. They're in the same sort of relationship pattern for probably life, right? And it can, it can be very unhealthy. But because it's familiar to them, and because it's what they're used to, and because it makes them feel good, because they're not got to really do any work in the relationship, it's all surface level stuff, then it feels best for them, right? And sometimes you just have to let that person go. If you've got an avoidant, right, and you're feeling awful by being an avoidant, eventually it's not going to work out, and you're going to have to let them go, or they'll let you go, or they'll discard you anyway. Do you know what I mean? So anyway, but it can feel hard, because with the discard, it's very, very similar in some ways. Like, you can feel like, with narcissists, they love bomb, then they discard. Whereas avoidants avoid emotions, then they can discard, right? If it comes too overwhelming for them. So you still got discards either way. And both people can blame you for them hurting you, because they're avoiding the emotional pain that they caused you. So they don't want to take responsibility for it. This is how the traits overlap, narcissism and avoidant attachment, because they don't want to take responsibility for the emotional pain they've caused. With a narcissist, they're completely oblivious to any of their own bad behavior whatsoever, and they don't even believe they've done anything wrong, right? With an avoidant, they'll probably more likely feel guilty that they've done something wrong or upset you, and they don't want to deal with the emotional fallout of that, so they'd rather avoid the whole situation entirely. And if they can blame you, then it's like deflecting, which is really not good. That's actually a narcissistic trait as well, deflecting their own shortcomings onto you, to basically say you're causing your own pain, when really it's them that's caused it. So this can be very, very horrible. Do you know what I mean? It can be very, very horrible and heartbreaking, and you can be very disorientated by the whole experience. I hope this is making sense to you. Got any questions, pop them in chat, right? So, right. So focusing on yourself can also help you respond more positively. Responding negatively to someone with a deactivated attachment style can lead us into some intense disagreements, unpleasant cycles, and yes, even premature breakup. So yeah, I mean, if you're feeling like avoidance going away from you, can just say to them, like, I've been feeling a bit distant from you lately, and I just wanted to check, like, what's happening and what's going on. Like, is there anything going on, anything that that's happened, that's created this disconnection that I feel? It's hard to explain to avoidant, because you kind of got to address the situation. But if they're avoiding emotions and they've got to speak about their emotions, they're not going to do it. So you might get vague answers. You might, if you're lucky, if they don't work on themselves, get a sympathetic and empathetic answer, and they'll like change their behavior, but it might just be temporary change, or they might not change it fully, or it'll feel like they're purposely just forcing themselves to do it, if you know what I mean, which again, it's really upsetting for you if you're on the receiving end of this. You do want reciprocity in a relationship and in connection. You want reciprocity. You want equal time, energy, and effort put into the relationship and connection as much as possible. You don't want to have to keep pulling back from the avoidant every time they get scared about being emotionally close to you. You don't want to have to deal with the fact that it feels like it's an empty relationship or connection in emotional sense, because you're the one carrying all the emotional weight in the relationship or friendship or connection. People don't realize the amount of emotional weight you can carry with an avoidant, because the emotions are all left for you to deal with usually, because they won't want to deal with it. So it's left for you to deal with all that emotional stress and pain and upset and difficulty on your own. It can be so isolating and alone. You can be one of those people that's in a relationship and feels so desperately alone. And this is just a sad thing. It's really upsetting, and it's just devastating, really, especially if you love the person so much or very close to them, or feel like you want to be close to them, So I do agree that, focusing on yourself can help you. And I know that if someone's feeling overwhelmed, if an avoidant's feeling overwhelmed, then you then have to like pull back by focusing on yourself more, focusing on different things and taking the focus off them. Because if they think the focus and attention's on them, like you really like them, you're really emotionally invested in them, you really love them, you really care about them, you're giving them the spotlight in terms of like how you feel about them emotionally, they just want to push that away. So if you then turn your sights to other things and you invest in your own hobbies and interests more purposely, you have to do this consciously and purposely, then they're likely, if they care about you, to come back, right? To spend more time with you again. But it's hard, isn't it? It's exhausting. It's like a relationship is hard work as it is connection and friendship, but having to do that constantly, the person comes towards you a bit, you then like thinking, great, this person, I'm feeling more emotionally connected to them. They're like, oh my God, this is getting a bit intense because she's getting more emotionally connected to me. I need to go away. I'll just talk about less emotional stuff. I'll avoid it. I'll pretend I haven't heard it. I'll carry on talking about things that got no relevance to what she's talking about or whatever gender you're into. And or I'll just acknowledge it, but then I'll brush past it or move straight on to another thing, right? This is heartbreaking. It's like you're doing all the work. You're doing all the emotional heavy lifting in that connection. And it's absolutely thoroughly exhausting. And you're like, oh my God, just what is happening? You're like, and it's stressful and it's anxiety inducing for you if you've got an anxious attachment style, especially, you know? It's just like so hard work. And you feel like you're going up a hill with a massive boulder, right? You've got this massive boulder and you're going up this hill and you're pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. And then some days later, you probably have to do it all over again, or a few weeks later if you're lucky. Probably be even days, maybe a week or two later, you're back to doing the same thing. And you're like, this is just so stressful. Relationships should be healthy. If you're feeling worse in them, then better. But the thing is with avoidant, like I said, they can be very good at acts of service and doing things for you, which can make you feel so good. Like, oh, they really care about me. They must really love me because they're doing all these things for me, right? But the emotional side is not there for you. That's painful, very painful position to be in, right? So going down to the attachment project again, I'm on the it can be difficult section. It can be difficult to avoid responding negatively when the experience can be so anxiety inducing. What did I just say? That's before I even read that. With this in mind, it can be reassuring to know the signs of disengagement and how they differ from deactivation. While there's no foolproof way to tell what someone else is thinking and feeling, here are a few potential signs your partner might be instigating a breakup instead of just deactivating. Signs an avoidant is done with you. I think if anyone has been through an avoidant connection, this might be the information you've wanted to hear, you know, to not repeat that cycle. If you're with avoidant now, I think this is very vital information. Like I said, like go through chat. This is on a site called attachmentproject.com, right? And /love/signs avoidant is done with you, right? That's what the article's called. Right, a 2012 study at the University of Kansas looked into what happens when different attachment styles initiate a breakup. Using their findings, we can see the difference between what happens when someone with an avoidant attachment is deactivating versus breaking up with you. Not every person with an avoidant attachment will follow the same patterns, and checking one or two of these boxes doesn't necessarily mean a breakup is on the way. Life stress and other factors might play into these behaviors. However, even if these behaviors have an explanation, they are not healthy ways to cope and can be painful to be on the receiving end of. If you feel your partner is exhibiting these signs, you may wish to consider whether you need to redefine the boundaries and expectations of your relationship. 4 signs an avoidant is done with you. Withdrawing more than usual. Blame and negativity. Manipulation tactics. Distant communication. Right? This is really horrible. This can be like seeing 2 different people in front of your very eyes, right? So number 1, withdrawing more than usual. Goes beyond typical avoidant patterns. Avoids all contact. 2, blame and negativity. No longer holds you in positive regard. Uses criticism. 3, manipulative tactics. Involves others in breakup communication indirectly. And distant communication. Uses technology to avoid face-to-face conversations. Right. So that's very interesting. I would also personally say that that it might be an unexpected breakup in the heat of the moment as well, that they've been thinking about for some time, or something's like some emotional stuff's been going on. They haven't been saying it, so it could all flare up. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I think it's hard,
These are breakup methods that researchers were most often used in avoidant partners. Withdrawing more than usual. Withdrawal is a cornerstone of deactivation, so it shouldn't come as a surprise when someone with an avoidant attachment style pulls away. However, if they pull away more than usual, they may be disengaging for good. So something that I've noticed with avoidance is they can be having conversations with you and sharing like about their life, and then all of a sudden they can just stop and treat you like a person they've met down the pub. This is awful. This is like so disorientating. It's like, I thought we were friends. So if we know, especially if you've known each other for a long time, for example, or in a relationship, right, where you've known them for some time, and then all of a sudden their behavior dramatically changes from like being, like sharing their life with you, right? Maybe they're sending you photographs from where they've been in their day. If you've got them to open up that far, because they probably don't even want to do that, but maybe they're sharing some photographs, maybe they're telling you what they've done with the day, but then all of a sudden the conversation just switches, and it's no longer about their day. It's just like, hi, how are you? If you're lucky, it might just be like, oh yeah, I've done this today, like a very blunt one sentence, maybe two, and that's basically all it is. So that you've gone from like sharing a bit about their life and world with you to basically just very basic stuff, like it's someone down the pub, like, hi, how you doing? I'm all right, how's you? All right, weather good? Yeah, great weather today, right, brilliant. This is the type of thing that can be shocking. It can be like, what the hell's going on? I thought we were like friends or connected or boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, and then all of a sudden you're talking to me like a stranger. It's awful, absolutely awful. I've been on the receiving end of this. Awful, right? So, right, if they keep conversation short and tell you very little about what they're getting up to, seem to discourage you from sharing much about what's going on in your life, and generally avoid contact as much as possible, they may be disengaging rather than deactivating. Other warning signs include decreasing displays of affection, avoiding accepting or doing favors, and spending more time with other people. All of these might occur to some extent in normal deactivation, but if your gut is telling you these behaviors are more intense than usual, they may signal disengagement. It's awful, it's an awful roller coaster of emotions to be on, right? You're like, what the hell is going on, right? It's awful. I really hope that I find people who are not avoidant. I know that, I'm not saying, I know there's people out there that avoid them, right? But I keep, like, because anxiously attached people attract avoidance and vice versa, right? And I have had a lot of avoidance in my life, but it's really hard work, and it's like you don't really get the reciprocity you need, in my personal experience. Or it's not consistent, it's not full reciprocity, in the whole sense of a person word, emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, all this type of stuff. Do you know what I mean? Their whole presence, right? When I'm talking about physical stuff, I'm not talking about sex, but obviously if you're sexual, that will play into it. But because people who are avoidant, by the way, can I believe, like, they can have sex without getting the emotional intimacy, because they don't want the emotional intimacy, they just want the sex. So like I said earlier, you can find that avoidants love hookups because they don't want emotional intimacy. They don't want that. They don't want commitment, right? They don't want commitment. Usually they don't want emotional intimacy. They like their space and to be single, and to just hook up and have sex with no emotional attachment with them is what they love, right? So it's not good, really. If you're in a relationship, it can be very difficult. You can end up in situationships a lot with avoidance, where you feel like you're in a relationship with someone. They're acting like they would if they were in a relationship with you, if it was anyone else. Do you know what I mean? If they weren't avoidant, they'd probably put a name to it and say, we're in a relationship now because we're doing everything together like a relationship, and we understand, we're like, we're in each other's spaces so much, right? But they won't call it a relationship. They'll either say it's not a relationship at all, or I don't want a relationship. They're non-committal, right? So you might feel like you're in a relationship. They might be doing all the right things, all the in terms of, like, when I say right things, obviously they're not emotionally connected to you, but they might be behaving like they're in a relationship with you, right? But they're not, because they don't want one, right? So yeah, and they will avoid at all costs, and they will probably run away sometimes. Some of them will as well. They might disengage and withdraw, and that be it, right? Okay. Blame and negativity. This one's horrible. I hate this, because if you are dealing with an avoidant, right, you might have been very caring, kind, empathetic, and understanding towards them, right? And you're trying to work with them with their avoidancy. So you're being patient. You're understanding that if you get emotionally close to them or try to, they're going to pull back probably. They're going to like avoid emotionally intimate conversations. They're gonna like be vague probably on anything feeling type. They're gonna find it uncomfortable to deal with it, change the subject, all these types of stuff, right? Which is just unhealthy. It's really unhealthy, right? But you know, if you are really loving the avoidant or really caring about them, really connected to them, really attached to them, right? You're trying to do that. You're trying to give them their space. You're trying to hold off. You're trying to pull back sometimes. You're trying to do your own thing, do your own hobbies, interests more than usual to compensate. Look at what I'm saying, compensate for the fact they're pulling away, they're pulling back, they want their space. So you're trying to compensate for that fact they're doing that. So you're changing your behavior to their behavior, right? I don't like this at all, because you are purposely having to change your behavior to maintain that connection. Because if you don't, you can't maintain it in the way you want, the way you want. Well, basically, you can't have what you want a lot of the time. So there's a lack. There's a lack in here. It's very disheartening. It's like you're giving, and when they want to pull away, you've then got to pull yourself back. You've got to be understanding and empathetic. They need space. Allow them that space. But you are just thinking, well, shit, I'm on my own now. Excuse my language. I'm on my own now. Like, again, because they're pulling away. They need their own space. And you're like, what the hell's going on? I just want a partner to be present for me, to be in the moment, present for me, emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually. I want them with me. And they're just like, they're aloof again, or they need their space. They're going away from you. And it's like this, it's like you're doing all the work. It's like, what the hell? I'm just doing all the work. Do you know what I mean? And so this is just awful, like, because you're having to be patient and understanding, which we all have to try and be in relationships. But this is, have you noticed how it's so imbalanced? These types of relationships, unless they're true avoidance, it's so imbalanced. Because, you can't have a balance where one person is going away when things get too emotional, right? And the other person is having to accommodate them all the time. Accommodate the fact they don't want to deal with emotions, accommodate the fact they don't want to deal with difficult conversations, accommodate the fact they need their space. This person is accommodating all this. So it's really, this person is like leading that connection. They're all the ones who are, in my opinion, like more in control of it, who are like calling the shots, as it were. That's how it can feel, right? It can feel like they're calling the shots, that you are trying to make them happy, really. And it's like, what's in it for you? What's in it for you? And then when they come back, it's like, oh, well, this is better. I've given them their space. They come back. And then the same repeated pattern will happen again and again and again. And it's absolutely exhausting. Absolutely exhausting. Right. And you're thinking, should I even be in this connection anymore? But you really want to be, because you like them a lot, and they've done a lot for you. Say, especially if they've done a lot of, like I said, they're good at doing acts of service. If they do a lot for you, say they do a lot for you around the house, right? Say you've got a partner and they're always there. Maybe they're picking the kids up from school if you've got kids together, right? Maybe you're married or you just live together, right? They're picking the kids up from school. They may be bringing things home like milk and bread or whatever. They're doing the errands. They're doing the acts of service. They're doing the chores, right? They're doing all this practical stuff. So you're like, oh my God, this person's amazing. I've got like a house person that helps me, and like, they're so good, right? And then you get at night, maybe the kids are in bed, and if you've got kids, most asexuals don't have kids, but some do. But you might not be asexual who's watching this, right? And so you're just like chilling out with him on the couch, right? And something comes up, maybe an emotion does, maybe you're feeling a bit sad about something's happening in your life, and you go to talk to them, and it's like they're hearing you and they're kind of just looking at you, and they'll be like, well, can I just listen to the TV program? Let's just listen to this. It'll make you feel better. Carry on watching the TV or something like that, right? Because they want to avoid the difficult conversation and dealing with your emotions when you're in an emotional state. It's so hard, right? They want to avoid it because it makes them uncomfortable, and their uncomfortability is more important than your comfort, right? But notice you're making them more comfortable by making allowances for them, that they can go away and have their space, and you have to pull back, and you have to be not so needy as they see it, pressurizing. So you have to pull back. And it's like you're accommodating them all the time. It's like, where is the reciprocity in that? Where is the equality in that connection? There's not really, is it? It's not. The power is mostly with them. Let's be honest about it. The power is mostly with the avoidant. If we're talking about power dynamics, which there shouldn't be that imbalance. It's not healthy. It's really not healthy. This is why people can be absolutely devastated. And if you go on dating sites, there are tons of avoidance on there because they're avoiding deep, intimate relationships. They just want hookups a lot of the time. You'll notice in their profile, they hardly put anything in their profile. And it's like, want to date. Well, maybe open to chat as well, right? Want to date. And that's it. They might say they speak English if they're lucky, you know what I mean? Or something like that. Because that's what they want to do. They just want to hook up. They don't want anything serious. They don't want to talk about their life and that, because that would involve letting you into their world, and that could get too emotional. And you know what I mean? They'd rather be on their own, have their space. You don't know much about them. They keep you at arm's length. It's not good, right? So, anyway, so let's go on to the blame and negativity section. I think I've already started reading this, but let's go on with it. The study found that when people with avoidant attachment styles are breaking up with someone, they tend not to bother softening the blow. While others may take the blame, emphasize the positives of the relationship, and go to any lengths to avoid hurting their partner's feelings, people with avoidant attachment styles prefer to do the opposite. Remember how the deactivation system develops in an attempt to save the relationship? If your partner is deactivating, they are likely still hold you in positive regard, right? This initially surprised researchers as mistrust in and devaluing of others is another core element of the avoidant attachment style. I mean, devaluing others is awful. That's that's a very overlapping thing with narcissism, right? Narcissists devalue people. Right, so avoidance, devaluing is hurtful. That's why there's overlaps. It's disgusting, devaluing someone, but they do, right? When you've been there for them and you've got them through tough times or whatever, if you're able to do that, because they don't like dealing with their emotions, so they happen to have something emotional going on in their life that's very, very overwhelming, right? If you're able to be empathetic and you're fine with dealing with emotions, you know, like you can. I mean, when I say fine, it's hard for anyone to deal with emotions, right? But you're an emotionally intelligent person, right? If you're there for them to get them through emotional, difficult times, right, they'll be glad because they feel overwhelmed. They don't know how to handle it. And they do prefer to handle it on their own. But it might just be a situation where they're too upset, right? And they have overspilled their upset, right? And they can't help it. And you'll be very, very patient and very, very kind with them, right? And understanding, right? But then when it comes to the other way around, right, they can like literally push you away and discard you. It's awful. So when we're talking about, right, this initially surprised researchers, I'll repeat that again, as mistrust in and devaluing of others is another core element of the avoidant attachment style, right? So I have noticed devaluation with more than one avoidant, right? It's like when you're there for them in their emotional needs because they can't handle it on their own, right? And it's just like a pinnacle of their time. And they, you know, in general, they like to deal with their own emotions, right? But in my experience, there are times in avoidance life when they will have emotions that are so overwhelming that they don't know how to deal with them. And if you're emotionally empathetic and emotionally intelligent, you'll be helping them get through tough times, right? But when they are no longer needing that from you, they will literally devalue and discard you. They won't hold you in high regard. Do you know what I mean? It'll be like you've served your purpose now, right? You serve your purpose, or maybe they want something else from you, right? And they just don't want them to deal with the emotional side of you, so they'll disregard you in that, right? So let's continue. Remember how the deactivation system works. Oh, right. We've gone on to that. Oh, hang on a minute. Sorry. I'm reading from the attachment project. The link is in the chat in case you wonder what I'm reading from. The attachmentproject.com, right? So, yeah, sorry, I need to carry on. I was going to repeat a part of the sentence, right? So we've just gone through this initially surprised researchers. This mistrust in and devaluing of others is another core element of the avoidant attachment style. However, in close relationships where trust and value has been established, these avoidant traits are less prevalent, right? So this is why it's so difficult, because yeah, if the trust has grown with the avoidant, and you know they've worked through some of their avoidant tendencies particularly, then some of this, the trust and value, like these avoidant traits are, they're less likely to discard you if they actually feel safe enough to be with you, because it's quite rare for avoidants to feel safe in a connection. So if they got that from you and they're getting that from you, they feel like you're not too smothering or too much in their face or whatever, and you're trying to give them all this space and pander to their needs or whatever, then notice I said pander to the needs. The reason why I used that was because I've said there's a lack of reciprocity here. There's a lack. It's like the other person having to do all the work to accommodate their avoidancy tendencies, which is exhausting, right? So it's like you're pandering to their needs instead of it being each, tailoring to the other person's needs. It's kind of like in certain ways. I'm sure that, it doesn't mean to say avoidants don't take care of any of your needs. I've already explained to you that they can be very good with acts of service and helping you out and doing things for you, right? But when it comes to emotional needs, it's like you need reciprocity, right? And you need to feel there's consistency there. It's heartbreaking if you feel that every time you're getting close to them, they just pull away again and then you've got to back off. It's just like, it's exhausting. Right? So it depends what attachment style you are. Obviously, if you're another avoidant, it doesn't matter. You both pull back from each other, have your own space, but you're used to it because that's the way you both operate. Right? So it depends who you are dealing with, right? So if your avoidant partner does not still show that they trust and value you, if they blame you for their withdrawal or aren't able to see you in a positive light, they may be disengaging instead of deactivating. I have had this, but it was sudden, right? It's very, very sudden. It's like they went from really like valuing me and appreciating me as much as they possibly can do to a certain extent, but I did see signs. I saw some signs of like like distancing communication sometimes, not asking me questions about myself, do you know what I mean, like any emotional stuff, like it can be hard for them to deal with all this type of thing. I mean, I've got a number of avoidants I've known in my life and know of. Do you know what I mean? So I'm trying to like kind of say like experiences with different ones. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, I've had this devaluing thing, and it's been quite well. It's felt really quick in the moment, but like the total devalue at the end. But I have felt like over time, over years, you can feel like you're getting more and more devalued. Sometimes it can happen like slowly, or it can happen like a bit and then not again. And then other times it can like escalate, and other times it's just like, oh, I appreciate you and valued you, and now I don't at all. Discard. It's awful. Do you know what I mean? So it depends who you're dealing with, right? But yeah, if they blame you for their withdrawal or aren't able to see you in positive light, they may be disengaging instead of deactivating. So I have had that happen to me, the disengaging bit, where they just like blame. So they blamed me for the hurt they caused me to lead to the disengagement. I'm like, what the hell? That's awful. Do you know what I mean? It's like gaslighting. Basically, they're deflecting their own shortcomings onto you and making you the person wrong for them, like breaking up with you or leaving your life. Do you know what I mean? It's awful. It's like, it's bad enough when someone splits up with you or is like, suddenly not in your going, not going to be in your life anymore. It's like really bad when all of a sudden they just like pull away, and then they blame you for the hurt they've done to you doing that. It's like they have to come up with some reasons to why you're the cause of them disengaging and going away. And it's like, what the hell? And it can be totally out of character to what you've seen before. Because obviously, if they have valued you before and they felt safe in the connection and you felt it was good connection, and then all of a sudden they start blaming you and they start, especially for like causing the breakup when clearly they've hurt you, and they're just using it as an excuse because they don't want to deal with their emotions. They don't want to deal with the emotional pain they're putting you through because it's uncomfortable for them. It's awful.
It's like, what? And it's not safe for you to be around that person anymore. When they are in that state, you know, they've got toxic, that's a time that's it. You don't go after them. You don't try and get them back. You don't try and win them back. You know, that's the end of it. That's the end of it. That's the trust gone, the emotional safety gone, physical safety in some aspects as well. If they start getting aggressive or violent, right? And you leave. You do not go back to this person. However much you love them, however much you care about them, however much you might still want them in your life, that's it. The moment they start behaving like this towards you, that's it. Trust is broken. You don't deserve that shit in your life. Listen to me, what I'm saying. You don't deserve that shit in your life. No one deserves to put you through that amount of pain. Especially if you've been so accommodating in the ways I've described. Do you know what I mean? They don't deserve that. It's like, leave them be, right? If they want to avoid being with you, leave them. Let them. They're welcome to be with other anxious, not other anxious people. I meant other avoidant people, because they, mind you, they might get with another anxious attachment person for a while, because they like the they kind of like anxious attached to people to a certain extent, and then they push them away. They kind of like the need in some ways, in terms of like, you know, it depends what type of person they are, but they sometimes like anxiously attached people in certain ways, but then they just obviously devalue the anxiously attached person and push them away. So it's kind of like, you know what I mean? It's all a bit much, really. But you must understand, if it gets to this stage when they are blaming you for their withdrawal and they're not able to see you in positive light anymore, especially the next section we're getting on to. So I'm talking again about the attachment project. I'm reading from it. So if my eyes wander through the screen a bit, you know where I'm coming from. But I think it's important to go through this article and to actually, you know, because I'm using my experience. I'm not just talking about the article, but it's a really good article if you want to learn more about avoidant attachment, called The Attachment Project. And you can actually do a quiz. The link is in the chat. Not my website. I'm not affiliated with it in any way, but I think it's good, you know, like if you want to know more about avoidance and avoidant attachment, because we can have a lot of problems with avoidant attachment people. But there are a lot in the world, you know. If people have done their work on themselves, there are avoidant people that can become more secure, and it's possible for them to, like, you know, reverse or get out of their bad patterns of behavior, if you know what I mean. But it's hard for a lot of them, and a lot of them will default back to their original avoidant tendencies. Even if they've made good progress, they might make really good progress and you think, wow, this is amazing. They're very different to how they used to be, in a positive way. And then they'll just go back to the same pattern because it's what they're comfortable with. And, you know, once they feel someone's gotten too emotionally attached to them, it's like, you know, I can't deal with it. I don't want it. No, I don't want it. Right. And so it's really hurtful and painful. Right. So signs of manipulation, right? This is the time that if they're doing this, you get the hell out of that situation. Or, you know, if they've already pushed you away, you do not go back. Do not go back to this type of person, because it's toxic for you. I have to say this. You have to mitre. You have to be mighty, or whatever you want to say. Mitre, I don't know if that's a word. I think it is. All your courage up to, like, leave this person behind, right? You do not want to be having someone in your life that's toxic for you, that's blaming you for their behavior, their bad behavior, and treating you appallingly, for them devaluing you, which again is an appalling trait, and making themselves look like, oh, you know, she deserved it, or he deserved it, or I had to do it, they gave me no choice, and all the rest of it. No, they're responsible for their behavior. You're not responsible for their behavior. Never let them brainwash you into thinking that, right? And I know if you really love the person, you really care about them, you might be scrambling to keep them. But once they've got to this stage, they no longer value you. They no longer value what they're saying. They're displaying toxic behaviors towards you. That's it. It's not a safe connection. You don't need that shit in your life. There's plenty of other people out there. And yes, you might not have anyone right now. You might be the only person, or they might be the only person you really connected with, right? For ages, right? Because an avoidant person takes a lot of time, energy, and effort. So you might find that you haven't got many other people, right? Because you're constantly trying to, like, work towards them. Maybe you're even people pleasing them. Do you know what I mean? So it can be hard, but just know that you can get through this, and you will get through it, right? Because you're strong, tough, brave, and courageous, right? And there's only so much giving you can do, right? Personally, with me, I get to a stage where I'm checked out. It's like, I've tried to be reasonable. I've tried to, like, you know, I care about your whatever, but I've got some self-respect and care,
right? I've learned over the years I have had toxic relationships before, as you can probably tell from what I'm saying, all these experiences. And they get to a point where you have to walk away. You don't go back, right? You don't go back. You're like, that's it. That's it. I'm done. I'm done with it. There's nothing more to say. Do you know what I mean? Unless you're tied to them for some reason, like got children with them or something like that, right? Then you can't just not be connected to them in some way, right? But you just use minimal conversation. Like they're avoidant, right? They avoid intimacy. They avoid deep emotional connection conversations, right? You just keep it surface level, right? It's talking on their language, right? But if you've got kids, you need to remain civil, surface level stuff. Please, thank you. Can you do this? Can you do that? Got kids? Can you take the kids there? Or when do you want the kids? Fine. Don't engage in any other communication with them. You know, it's not personal stuff anymore, right? They've chosen to be this way with you. They've behaved badly with you. This is a time when you have to let them go and have well, you should cut them off completely if you can. If it's not possible, right? If they're displaying toxic behaviors, there's no reason why they should be in your life, even if they've been in your life for a long time. There's no reason, right? They don't deserve it, right? They do not deserve it, right? But if you've got to have them in your life for some reason, such as children, or you got some other reason, right? Then you have to be civil with them. Be civil, polite, whatever, but it's formal stuff, right? No emotional stuff. Don't get yourself emotionally hooked to them again. It's actually quite good for you to emotionally pull back, because once you take your emotions back for yourself, you take your personal power back. You don't try to get them to open up emotionally to you anymore. You don't try to connect with them emotionally. It becomes boring conversation, right? Because it's surface level shit. It's just like, you know, it's like you're just doing formalities, right? That's all it is, right? It's formalities. And if they try to win you over or win you back, just don't bother. Just don't engage, right? And if they are at the blame stage, they're going to throw whatever they can at you, right? Don't engage in conversation unless you have to with them, and keep it to a minimum, right? The point is that you're disengaging with them. Very, very important. You have to disengage with them. You almost have to be like them in this way. Avoid deep, intimate conversations and disengage with them, right? Because once they've got to this stage, because it's toxic, these are toxic behaviors when they're devaluing and blaming you for hurting you, right? Putting the emphasis on you. These are toxicity, right? You don't want this in your life. This is very bad, right? So we're going on to the third stage now of, we're talking about, you know, signs and avoidant is done with you, right? So we've got the withdrawing more than usual, blame and negativity, and then signs of manipulation, right? Avoidant partners in this study were also likely to use manipulation tactics to initiate a breakup. I want you to hear this. They're likely to use manipulation tactics to break up with you, right? So we're talking about devaluing you, blaming you, manipulation, right? These again are traits of narcissists as well, right? This is why they can be crossovers sometimes, or people get confused. Are they a narcissist or are they avoidant, right? So usually it's a motive behind it that's a real decision maker. But anyway, they can overlap, right? These are toxic behaviors anyway, regardless of which one they are, right? So let's go through this, right? So avoidant partners in this study, we'll go back again to this first sentence, were also likely to use manipulation tactics to instigate a breakup rather than doing it directly. This included hinting to or straight up informing third parties that they wanted to break up with their partner in the hopes that it would get back to them, or even asking someone else to break up with their partner for them. This might also try to introduce or encourage new potential partners for their current partner to date instead. I've had guys doing this to me, even like when I haven't known them that long. Do you know what I mean? Or they may start dating other people themselves, cheating, hoping that this would communicate their breakup intentions to their partner. I've had guys say to me that about dating other people. I went on a date with a guy, right? An Indian guy, right, years ago, 21-year-old Indian guy, very, very avoidant, I found out. Very avoidant. Right? And I went on the date with him, and he literally was having a meal with me, right? And then he was talking about me finding another guy for me, and go, oh, you should look in Birmingham because there's lots of Indian guys there in Birmingham. You probably find one there for you. And I'm thinking, what the F? I'm on a date with him because I was interested in having a relationship with him. He was meant to be interested in having a relationship with me because we met through a dating site, which clearly he wasn't in the end. Although he made out it was, and then he switched his tone, right? And it's like, what the hell? Why am I sat down listening to a guy who's trying to get me with other guys? Now you know why, because it's a classic avoidancy tendency, and it's a sign of manipulation. It's awful. Manipulative tactics like these might still manifest from the instigator's avoidance of other people's emotions, but they shouldn't form part of the usual behaviors in a deactivated attachment system. If your partner is repeatedly using manipulation like this to respond to conflict, you may wish to consider whether their behavior is something you can work through together or whether it potentially signifies a larger problem. In other words, if you need to split up with them. I mean, I hope you realize from all the stuff I'm sharing with you tonight how difficult it is to be with an avoidant, right? How difficult it is, especially one that's not worked on themselves, right? Because it's exhausting. If you're the one carrying the emotional weight of the relationship by yourself, it's exhausting. There's a lack of reciprocity. There's a lack of genuine equality, and it's just exhausting. It's emotionally exhausting, and you think you can end up being on even keel again, then just to fall off it. And then behaviors they can retract and all sorts, and you're like, what the hell is going on? And you're like, why am I trying to sort you? You end up being the person who's always trying to sort the difficulties out between you, always trying to bring the difficult conversations, the conflicts, the problems to try and solve them. And they're the ones that are just avoiding it. It's just awful. It's just awful, right? This is really bad. This is all the dark side I'm talking about of avoidant attachment, right? Distant communication. Finally, when avoidant partners were initiating a breakup, they often used indirect communication methods to end the relationship. This can involve messaging, calling, or writing, or even changing their online profile's relationship status. This was a be-all, end-all in 2012 when the study was conducted, or blocking their partner. Yeah, I've had an ex do stuff like that. The ex last year, right? Instead of him telling me that he was ending the relationship, he literally just blocked me on Facebook. Well, I think he deactivated his account, actually, on the way home from seeing me. It was awful. And he was still messaging me, and then he just basically shut the Facebook down without even telling me. It was awful. Do you know what I mean? And then he was still on Instagram. He's like, and he was still texting me on my phone. You know what I mean? And he would still call me on his phone and was pretending that he just didn't. He got shut out of his Facebook. You know what I mean? And his sister's got his phone to get back in. It was so stupid. Anyway, yes. So avoidant, but he was narcissistic as well, as far as I can tell. So yeah. So yes, yeah. Right. So without a face-to-face discussion, these methods of communication can sometimes leave us feeling like there's still room for negotiation. Unfortunately, people with avoidant attachment styles do not use them to. Unfortunately, people with avoidant attachment styles do use them to disengage. And it's probably best to take them at face value. If your partner is not disengaging but just deactivating, they may pull away without going so far as to do something like this to communicate they want to end the relationship. So yeah, once they've basically made their mind up by using blaming behavior, devaluing you, clearly putting how can I put it, putting things before you, right? You're no longer a priority in their life. They've devalued you. You're no longer a priority in their life. They've made you in the wrong for their own behavior. Maybe they've even got a bit aggressive. All this type of stuff, which obviously is a red flag if they got aggressive. All these type of stuff, any of these type of stuff, this is not healthy for you. This is toxicity now, and this you have to let it go. Even if they decide to come back to you, they don't usually do, because obviously this is a sign that they're that they're disengaging rather than just deactivating. But even if they do come back, they don't deserve to have you back. They don't deserve to have you back in their life, right? They've made their bed, let them lie in it, let them do whatever, go and be with another avoidant. Well, they're both avoiding their own emotions, avoiding each other's emotions, just talking about surface level stuff, right? Let them go. Don't try and get them back. That's the end of it, right? That's the end of it, right? Do not go back to these people, right? And it's hard. It's very hard, but it's better to have your own self-worth
and self-respect and self-esteem intact as much as possible by taking your personal power back and just basically disengaging with them back, right? Don't, you know, like I said, if you've got children or some other reason why you need to talk to them, maybe you still live together and stuff like that. And of course, you can't just do that. You have to be civilized, but it's best to keep it to small talk and surface level stuff like they like. So then at least things are harmonious, and then you can take back your personal power by having your emotions within yourself and channel it into other things and just not creating any type of connection with them ever again. Just formality stuff. That's it. That's all you need to do for getting by with these people. That's it. Right. And they'll probably miss I think they do miss, avoidants do miss what they had with you sometimes. If they're feeling sorry for themselves, they might not miss it straight away. They might just be relieved that, oh, I don't have to like worry now about showing my emotions, sharing my emotions, and dealing with the other person's emotions, you know, which were too much for me. So they might feel really relieved, and they might be all right for a while, but then eventually, if you've been there for them in tough times, and they have tough times again, and they've got no one there for them because all they've got is other avoidance, they might start to feel the weight of the gap they've created and void in their life by you not being in it. They might, if you're lucky, but we don't need to go by luck because they were lucky to have you, and now they don't deserve you anymore. So always, always put yourself first. They get to a point where you just got to like, nope, that's enough. Period. Don't take their shite anymore, right? So I'm not going to go, like they do talk here about no contact. No contact has a viral moment late in 2024 with the search term going no contact, reaching an all-time high in September last year. This is an idea of making zero contact with your partner, ex, or love interest, often with the goal to elicit a response. I don't believe in a response. I'm not interested in a response. If I go no contact, I'm like, that's it. I don't want a response. I don't want the guy to come back in my life. I'm literally like, he doesn't deserve to be in my life. I'm not interested. And most people don't change their behavior. They don't change their patterns, right? I had a guy come back to me on Instagram like last month randomly, right? I haven't seen this guy for over 2 years, and I dated him, right? And it was interesting because it's like in the message, I didn't even know who he was, and he alerted me to who it was. I was able to work out who it was by what he said, like what type of date did we have, blah blah blah. And he went from the same conversation, being interested in a call with me, to then saying he wanted to meet up with me in person, which I said I wasn't prepared to do because I prefer a phone call first, to then saying, I'll see when I'm available, which is very vague. And I'm like, no, you're clearly not really interested in me, because if you were, you go out of your way to accommodate a time that suit me because you've just come back in my life. If someone comes back into your life, unless they've categorically, fundamentally changed their patterns of behavior, like in therapy for 2 or 3 years, for example, or more, then nothing's different. Nothing's changed. If someone comes back in your life going, oh, I love you, I care about you, I've been thinking about you. What the hell? So what? If if they left in a toxic way for you, if they were bad to you and not good to you in the end, right? That doesn't warrant you having them back in your life, even if they give you an apology. Thanks for the apology. Now I'm getting on with my life. Right? You don't owe them anything. You don't owe them to be back in your life. You just move on. If nothing's changed in them, then nothing's changed. If nothing's changed in them, nothing's changed. And you can't be with someone unless they fundamentally changed the stuff that was wrong with them in the first place that caused the breakup, or the huge heartache, or the toxicity. And some people can even go back to those patterns, you know. Sometimes you can be making lots of progress and then that's it. They do a U-turn unexpectedly. Absolutely awful, shocking. Very, very shocking. And you're like in disbelief. You're like, I can't believe it. I'm gobsmacked. It's like seeing two different people. I mean, this is basically what it can be like with what I was saying about disengagement, you know, deactivating strategies versus disengagement. I mean, the deactivating is like, you can understand it more, but you are having to do a lot of accommodating and emotional heavy lifting of the relationship or connection or whatever. But the disengagement and the discard, all that lot, blaming you and stuff like that, awful. Absolutely awful. This is an experience I've actually had, by the way, in case you're wondering. I'm talking from personal experience. I'm not a medical professional. So anyway, right. So there is another website called, which has got relational therapy, right? I will just see if I can put this in chat, right?
So, avoidant attachment versus narcissistic personality disorder. So, some of them have overlaps. I told you this earlier. So, I'm going to put this in chat now. Let me just get the copy. I think I've got copy and paste there, right? So, you can see this next article now. I mean, go and click through it so we can talk through it together. I will also put these links in the description after this video is no longer live, for people who are watching it on replay, or you want to go back to it, you think you might have missed something important, something I've said. Don't forget, give this video a thumbs up if you like it. It's very important. Helps the channel to be seen by more people, and then obviously more people can have access to this type of information, which is very valuable. So I'm just going to plug my charger in as well, so you'll hear a little whoosh or something. Probably. There we go. Right. Avoidant attachment versus narcissistic personality disorder. So I've just posted the link in chat for anyone who wants to follow along. This is by Roots Relational Therapy. Right. June the 20th. It doesn't say what year, so I don't know if it's this year or another year. Avoidant attachment versus narcissistic personality disorder. Does the person on your mind have an avoidant attachment style or narcissistic personality disorder? There is some overlap between the two that can make it difficult to know for sure what you're dealing with, and therefore how you should proceed. This is why it's so hard. You know, there is overlap, like I've said, and so that makes it difficult, right? So, let me just put the other thing away. Right, okay, so here we go. Right, if you're in a relationship, this question comes down to whether or not they are capable of change. Attachment styles can change, but someone with narcissistic personality disorder cannot. You're asking, is there hope? Am I wasting my time trying to invest in this person? If you're no longer in the relationship, this question boils down to what the heck happened and how do I never let that happen again? I'm here with some important distinctions to help you answer those questions. Similarities between avoidant attachment and narcissism. Avoidant attachment and narcissism are similar in the following ways. They both can be self-centered. Yes. Oh my God, yes. Right. So if you are having a connection, relationship, friendship with a avoidant attachment, right, because they don't want to discuss your emotions, they don't want to get involved with you emotionally, right, and I don't feel they take a very big interest in you. It's more like surface level stuff, right? It's more like about their life and surface level stuff, right? Then you can definitely feel they're very self-centered. It's all about them, right? It's like when they're talking, instead of them asking genuine questions, like obviously it's a red flag if they're not asking you questions about yourself. And especially if they don't ask you much at all. And if you're, like you're one asking all the questions, right? It can feel like they don't value you at all. Like, why are you putting all the time, energy, effort, and interest in them? It's not good, right? So they can be very self-centered. It's all about them because they don't want to deal with your emotion stuff. It can all be about their life, themselves. It can be about, what's going on in their life, but they're not willing to dive into what's happening with you in case you come up with some emotional stuff that you don't like and they want to avoid dealing with that, right? So you might even say to them stuff that's happening in your life that you're finding difficult, that you need some support with. But instead of them being there, they're like just seeing that, but then totally ignoring it, going, oh, I hope you feel better soon. And they're checked out, right? That's not good. So they both can be self-centered, avoidant attachment and narcissists, right? They both struggle with sustained intimacy. This is so true, right? The narcissist struggles to sustain intimacy because obviously they're narcissistic and they're not healthy, but also avoidance. They can't do sustained intimacy because they try and avoid the emotional stuff. But a lot of narcissists, they're not empathetic. They don't really understand that. They're just like very self-centered out for themselves, right? They both avoid being vulnerable in front of others in fear of being portrayed as weak or incompetent. They both are sensitive to criticism and stubborn with disagreements. And they both avoid accountability towards their impact on others, especially when it comes to how they make others feel. Yeah. This is very important. I've been subjected to like avoidance, and they literally will deflect their shortcomings onto you as well. I found that's with avoidance and narcissists, right? So they'll avoid accountability, right? And their impact. You know, like you might get people thinking that they're fine and they're nice to people. Avoidancy is not a nice thing. It's not a kind thing. Avoiding other people's emotions, avoiding difficult conversations, avoiding their feelings, avoiding talking to them, avoiding spending time with them. You know what I mean? It's not a kind thing to do that. It's just like very self-centered. It's all about them. Do you know what I mean? Like their life revolves around them. And so there's nothing like kind about it. It's just awful, really. And so yeah. And the lack of accountability is definitely in the disregard, you know, when they're discarding the person, you know, at the end, when they devalue and discard, you know. And you know, they because they don't want to deal with how they make others feel, they will deny making them feel that way. It'd be like the person's done something to make them behave like that, when reality you haven't, right? It's them that's done that, but they don't want to deal with the emotional fallout. They don't want to have to face the emotional impact of what they've done to you, because they want to avoid emotions. So they want to push it onto you, saying you're to blame for the way that they've treated you, which is a form of gaslighting as well, really. So as far as I'm concerned, they both devalue and they both deflect their shortcomings and gaslight. Do you know what I mean? Differences between avoidant attachment and narcissism. The first distinction is found in their pattern of regulating closeness and distance. Narcissists use love bombing to create a quick, intense connection with you, then remove it when you aren't doing what they want you to do. Narcissists use distance to punish, manipulate, and control you. With a narcissist, you only get affection and closeness as long as you're feeding their ego. If you'd like to learn more about love bombing, check out their article. You can, previous article and video, right? On the other hand, someone with avoidant attachment does not have a love bombing phase. They are pretty consistent with the amount of affection and closeness they're comfortable with in the beginning across time. Avoidants use distance to regulate their discomfort with closeness and make themselves feel safe. They've either never really trusted anyone before, or when they did trust someone, they were hurt. Therefore, avoidants are hesitant to get close to someone again. Intimacy can feel overwhelming and uncomfortable because it's registered as a threat. I hope this makes sense. Let me know if you're following along or if there's anything else I need to clarify, right? I'm here in chat for you. That's why I do this chat show, right? We're hanging out late at night. In the UK, it's like gone 2 a.m. So right. So where are we? They're pretty consistent with the amount of affection and closeness they're comfortable with in the beginning across time, right? Avoidants use distance to regulate their discomfort. We've gone through that with closeness and make themselves feel safe. They've either never really trusted anyone before, or when they did trust someone, they were hurt. Therefore, avoidants are hesitant to get close to someone again. Intimacy can feel overwhelming and uncomfortable because it registers as a threat. In their minds, being close to someone else takes away from their own autonomy and freedom. Unlike the narcissist, distance isn't about controlling or punishing you, it's about protecting themselves. Yeah. So that's a very important distinction. Avoidants are avoiding to protect themselves, whereas narcissists are doing it to punish you. There's two completely different things. But stonewalling is punishing, and both can do that. So you know what I mean? It can feel punishing, it can be punishing. Do you know what I mean? It's not good, but it's meant to be the motives that's the difference. Like you know, someone who's avoidant is just doing it because they're trying to avoid the emotional stuff, but it's not good either way. They're not good, right? So okay, let's go then. In their minds, being close to someone else takes away from their own autonomy and freedom. Unlike the narcissist, distance isn't about controlling or punishing you, it's about protecting themselves. I thought it was important to emphasize that bit again. Pay attention to when they distance themselves. Is it a power move or punishment for disappointing them? Or does it seem to come up when intimacy grows beyond what they're used to? The second distinction is found in how they regulate their emotions and sense of self. Narcissists demand that you regulate their distressing emotions and manage their self-esteem. With narcissists, you are solely responsible for how they feel and how they look. You work like their thermostat. If it gets a little too hot, you're expected to step in and cool it down. In contrast, avoidants are hyper-independent. Yeah, definitely hyper-independent. They don't rely on others to regulate their emotions. They deal with it on their own. Avoidants don't depend on others to define who they are. It's actually quite the opposite. They cling to their sense of self, separate from you. But again, you can't have a healthy relationship if they're if they're completely separate from you, right? You need to have your independence, but there needs to be some sort of middle ground. Do you know what I mean? So, so the third distinction is found in how they manage conflict. Avoidants don't like conflict. They are much more likely to shut down, run away, or ignore problems altogether. Proper conflict management requires a certain level of intimacy and collaboration with someone else, which is distressing for avoidance. Narcissists, on the other hand, instigate conflict to destabilize you. Anytime they are actually accountable for a problem, narcissists will find a way to flip it back on you. They will pick a fight to chip away at your self-esteem, isolate you from others, and make you reliant on them to be your sole connection. Narcissists use conflict to confuse and control you. Avoidants don't. Well, yeah. I mean, but avoidance can actually still flip the script on you, because if they're blaming you, as we've discovered from the other article, if they are blaming you when they're actually at fault for hurting you because they don't want to deal with the fallout of your emotions and they're not being accountable, do you know what I mean? Yeah, I don't. Do you know what I mean? Anytime they're actually accountable for a problem, narcissists will find a way to flip it back on you, but I find avoidance do that as well. So that makes it hard. Do you know what I mean? Because, if or in my experience, but then sometimes it's hard, isn't it, to decide whether that person's narcissist or avoidant. But it's like they can flip it back on you because they are at the disengaging stage and they don't want to take responsibility for the emotional pain they've caused you. So they'd rather say it's your fault for doing blah, 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 even though they were the one who was basically disengaging with you and discarding you, basically. Do you know what I mean? Should you have hope? Yes, technically, avoidants have the ability to become more securely attached. I was going to say secretive because they can be a secretive avoidance as well, very secretive. So yes, technically, avoidants have the ability to become more securely attached and grow their tolerance of closeness and intimacy, while people with a narcissistic personality disorder do not have the capability to change. However, on average, only 1 in 4 people successfully change their attachment style from insecure to secure over a 4-year period. Yeah, and I think this is what's so hurtful, is that you can find that avoidants do make progress if they are trying to help themselves, to grow, and then they can go backwards again. And you're like, what just happened? Do you know what I mean? So yeah, usually this is accomplished through therapy and a securely attached partner that is patient with their gradual exposure to trust and intimacy. If you do not have a secure attachment and they aren't in therapy looking to become more secure themselves, don't hold your breath. However, the question of whether or not someone is avoidant or narcissistic is incredibly valid and useful information. Being able to tell the difference between an avoidantly attached person and a narcissist is a necessary part of accurately reflecting on the past, processing what happened, grieving the loss of attachment, gaining closure, and moving forward in future relationships wiser. A flaw that I've noticed with so-called dating coaches or relationship specialists with no in-depth therapeutic training or understanding of attachment and human development is oversimplification. Here are red flags to avoid and green flags to look for. That is why I have spent ages on this live stream. I mean, literally, it is over 2.5 hours I've spent with you because I wanted to make sure I gave you the best information. Obviously, I'm using a couple of articles because this is more expertise that you're getting than just my own personal experience and knowledge. You know what I mean? Which is important. This is helpful surface level information. Maybe their avoidance doing that on a rational level. But this type of advice is best when we aren't already attached to someone. In matters of the heart, once that bond is made, the mind doesn't easily overpower the heart. Just because we see a red flag doesn't mean we know what to do about it. Some of us are attracted to red flags because they're familiar and exciting. Deeper therapeutic work beyond what TikTok advice can offer is needed to elicit real change, to recalibrate our blueprint for love into one that is healthy and secure. If you were or are attached to a narcissist, most people don't understand just how earth-shattering that is. It's not as simple as red light, green light, because we lost trust of our own eyes. Yeah. I've had narcissistic relationships. You know, I've been in relationships with narcissists before. It's awful. So yeah, it's understandable that people look for diagnoses and labels to make sense of their experience. It's human to look for signs of potential danger. It's okay that you need to know this in order to grieve the loss of the love you hoped to have. It's fully understandable that diagnoses and labels help you to make sense of the complicated terrain of dating relationships. And I encourage you to not be too reliant on them or too focused on figuring out other people. The ultimate goal is to focus on what's relevant to you, knowing what your needs are to feel loved, and being mindful whether or not this person is able to consistently meet them. I haven't met anyone that can consistently meet my needs, and avoidants definitely don't. This is the ideal, more direct route to the ultimate destination of safe and secure love, but most people aren't blessed with ideal conditions or accurate self-awareness. Take what you need from labels, then focus on the bigger picture. Regardless of motivation, if avoidance and distance is intolerable to you based on your emotional needs, their diagnosis or label doesn't matter. What matters is simply that they aren't a compatible match with what you need. I think that's really important, because I just realize more and more that I just don't want to be with someone who's avoidant. I really don't want to be with someone who's avoidant in a relationship, especially, but preferably I don't want that either in a friendship or connection. It's just too much. Do you know what I mean? So anyway, I did read from Diary Confessions of a Hyperromantic Asexual earlier. So if you haven't already got a copy of that, go to Amazon. It's as someone said in a review, they said it's about the psychology of relationships. So this will really help you with some of this content, because I do break down text messages for you to understand what they are about a lot more. Go and get a copy of this book, Diary Confessions of a Hyperromantic Asexual, 78 Life Lessons to Ace Your Life. These life lessons will really help you with a lot of these things I'm talking about. And so will the book. So yeah, go and grab a copy of that. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the thumbs up if you like it, if you've got any value out of this video whatsoever. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the notifications button if I haven't already said that, so you never miss an episode. I'll see you soon next for your live stream. Lots of love. Take care and see you soon. Thanks for watching. Bye.